Hi, I'm Jennifer L. Howell, Esquire,
And I'm Ishtar Howell.
And I'm David.
and you're listening to episode
69, dudes!
of Every Rom Com, the podcast that has fun taking romantic comedies seriously.
This week on Every Rom Com, we're taking a trip back in time to San Dimas, California in 1989.
We'll discuss a high school movie where the future of humanity hinges on a history project.
And we'll take a look at the genre of the bromance as we discuss the Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Hello, Ishtar. Hello, David.
Hi.
Hi, sis.
Welcome back to Every Rom-Com, both of you. You've both been on the show previously. Ishtar, you may remember from episodes on Last Holiday and Somewhere in Time. And David is our Jim Carrey man, somehow that happened. He was on Once Bitten and Yes Man. Glad to have both of you back here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me back. This will be a really fun one to get into.
So it's kind of odd. We are indeed covering Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. This isn't really a rom-com by most stretches of the imagination. Of course, it's not the first time we've covered something that's not a rom-com. But my reason for including this movie in our high school movie series is quite juvenile, as you may have guessed from the introduction. But I guess this introduces you to a new side of our podcast. Maybe the less mature, less sophisticated aspect of the podcast. But I have a great love for the film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And there's a reason also why I chose these two guests. First of all, my brother, Ishtar Howell. We watched this movie together all the time when we were kids. And my brother is kind of a history genius. I don't know. Do you think that's saying too much, Ishtar?
I think it's probably saying a bit too much. But, at certain times in this life, we've gotten close. So you can say it. You can say it on this podcast.
I mean, when you were like 6 and 7 years old, you were obsessed with Abraham Lincoln and you had like a picture of him hanging over your bed. And I also just found out from our Uncle David that my mom tried to get him to find you an Abraham Lincoln doll so that you could sleep with it at night for Christmas one year. Because that's what you said you wanted.
That's absolutely the case. And I was being very one-pointed. Mom and Dad kept asking me what I want for Christmas. And I said, only one thing, an Abraham Lincoln doll. I don't want anything else. Only that. And don't bother with anything else. That was it.
Yeah, you also had like all the presidents memorized, and I think at one point all the Chinese emperors memorized. And
I was working on the Roman emperors, but I ran into trouble when in like the 3rd century when they kept assassinating all the emperors and you have an emperor for like a few days.
yeah,
That's a difficult patch, but basically from the Julio Claudians to the 5 good emperors, I was pretty good.
Anyway, you can see why my brother is a good choice for this episode. He always loved the history. One more anecdote. Once we went to Galena, Illinois, and there was a wax museum, and my brother actually corrected the positioning of Abraham Lincoln in what was it, the Ford's Theater scene?
We actually were at Ford's Theater. This was a DC trip.
Oh, okay.
There was a DC trip as well, and they had things positioned wrong. The gun was pointed towards the wrong side of Lincoln's head.
Details.
Yes, and they corrected it.
Yep. Yeah, this is my brother, so the childhood history genius. So you've moved into other fields since then, which we'll talk about in a second. And David, I think I just had a hunch about you for this episode. And also I was like basically ran by you the ridiculous idea of, because I was on episode 69 of Every Rom-Com, I had to do Bill and Ted's. And you understood. Like you didn't like kind of look at me quizzically over chat. You just seemed to understand it.
Yeah. It's it's a perfect opportunity. You know, sometimes we hit these milestones in podcasting and things just work out. And this is one of those situations. So yeah, I'm glad you thought of me for this one. And definitely don't bring up history with me though, because it was always my worst subject. So I'm glad you have a history expert on this episode because it definitely is not me.
Interesting. I like it. We're bringing in all angles here.
No, this is
Yeah.
great, David, because this movie is drunken history. This was the predecessor for the YouTube sensation of drunken history. This film, so we can take liberties here.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. I wonder, David, was that going to be one of your puzzle pieces by any chance?
No, but immediately that is a perfect one. Like as soon as you mentioned that, that is that totally could come up for sure.
Yeah, so to segue that a little bit, if you haven't listened before to the shows David's been on our show or to David's show itself, he's the host of the Piecing It Together movie podcast. And that's a show where he looks at movies and he finds like the little pieces of other movies that may have inspired those movies. And it's a great podcast, really great listen. I want to know, David, is there anything new going on with Piecing It Together podcast or any of your projects that you've got going on?
There's always something. This year has been the year of live shows. I've been having a really fun time, almost one a month throughout the year, putting on these shows in movie theaters after screenings of movies. And it's been a really fun addition to the podcast. But aside from that, just continuing to cover as many movies as I can and staying ridiculously busy. Also, music has been good and busy too. I just finished scoring another short film. I'm going to be starting on another one next week, and I have a whole bunch of new album music coming out next year. I'll be announcing that very soon, but definitely keep an eye out for that.
That is very cool. Like, what
That
is
is,
what is your favorite live show you've done recently, if you can choose one?
Well, it's hard to say because they're all so much fun and like the different guest lineups and whatever the movie is. Um, so it's always a little different, but it was really fun though. This most recent one was on Eli Roth's Thanksgiving,
Mm.
and even if it wasn't necessarily like my favorite movie of the bunch, like although it was fun, but it was definitely our most attended so far, and it's always great to feed off that energy. And we had a really nice crowd, and they were all throwing out puzzle pieces, and so it was exactly what you want out of trying to take the podcast into a live setting.
Awesome. I'm gonna enjoy listening to that one. I like to wait until I've actually seen the movies before I listen to your show though. So
Good
sometimes
idea.
it does take me a while sometimes. And I'm also excited to, hear about the new music when you make that announcement. So where can people actually find out this information and listen to your podcast and so forth?
So the podcast, Piecing It Together, you can find on all the podcast apps and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And then my music, by davidrosen.com. Also on all the socials, it's by David Rosen. That's B as in boy, Y as in yes, David Rosen, my name. And all the music is available on all the streaming services as well as for sale on Bandcamp and all that too. And I have music videos on YouTube too.
Yeah, a multi-talented man, David Rosen here. So check his work out for sure. And Ishtar, I want to hear a little bit about what's going on with you too. Even though you're my brother, obviously I know some things, but I know you've launched recently a YouTube channel. How's that been going?
yeah. I've been mystified because I was just listening to David, and I was just completely impressed by all that he's been up to. But yeah, they started a YouTube channel. I only have 3 videos up there because I took a long break, and now I get to start making them again. But that channel is essentially a combination of me teaching people meditation techniques, talking about all the weird phenomena I've experienced in this life, and just kind of talking about different aspects of spiritual development.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a really good channel. Like, and I hope you get some more videos up on it soon too. Yeah, and you've been on a lot of other people's shows as well. So when you say that you haven't been on too many podcasts, you've been interviewed so many times, Ishtar.
Yeah, that is true. At this point, I'm all over the internet and certain niches, which is actually part of the reason I started my own channel because I didn't want to answer the same questions all the time, and kind of wanted to tell other stories. And I'm sort of turning down there's a plethora of near death experience video channels on YouTube, and I think I've just hit my limit of how many of those I should go on. So I get to talk about the weirdness of Lake Geneva in Oregon.
And can you tell people what kind of other services you offer and like where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah. I've been teaching meditation for about 20 years at this point, and I've been doing working as a professional astrologer. What is it now? Just about 9 years, which is bizarre. And my meditation website is www.ascension-meditation.com. And my astrological website is www.awakenedlightastrology.com.
Excellent. I'm gonna put links to all of David and Ishtar's sites and social media in our show notes, so you don't have to necessarily be writing this stuff down while you're listening to it. You can find it in our show notes, along with many other helpful things like timestamps for our episode and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm so excited to talk with you both about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure today. And before we do that, though, I've got a few little announcements for every rom-com. First of all, we're going to have, as usual, a spoiler free section at the beginning of the episode, and we will let you know when the spoilers begin. We'd also like to remind you, as usual, that you can follow us on social media. Our Facebook page is Every Rom Com Podcast and Blog. Our Instagram is at Every Rom Com. Our Twitter handle is at Every Rom Com Pod. And we also now have a Bluesky account at Every Rom Com. And of course, you can always find us at everyromcom.com. Send us feedback at everyromcom.com. And please, if you like what you hear, please rate, review, and subscribe to us, like on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. Love to see a review. And finally, we do have one way to help the podcast financially. You can visit our Buy Me a Coffee page at buymeacoffee.com/everyromcom. And all the proceeds we receive there go directly towards producing the show. Podcasting, unfortunately, isn't entirely free, and I'm probably going to have to buy some new equipment shortly. So any help is always appreciated. So thanks very much. And now we're going to go ahead and listen to the trailer for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Now, a motion picture so grand, so magnificent, and so vast, it spans 7,000 years.
No way! Yes way!
But it starts with Bill.
I'm Bill S. Preston!
Who was Joan of Arc?
And Ted.
Noah's wife? We're in danger of flunking most heinously tomorrow.
A force from the future.
Can we go anywhere we want at any time?
You can do anything you want.
Is putting history at their fingertips.
Let's reach out and touch someone.
They're traveling through time.
How's it going, Royal Ugly Dudes?
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus. How's it going, dude?
And they're making a big impression.
Historical babes.
Now they're home.
Everybody get together, remember who your buddy is.
To trash the 20th century.
You got a live one here.
Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, Napoleon,
We're from history.
Billy the Kid.
Oh my God!
Joan of Arc, Sigmund Freud,
Tell me about your mother.
You a musician?
Beethoven,
Genghis Khan!
Abraham Lincoln,
Party on, dudes!
Socrates, George Carlin.
We're history.
If you guys are really us, what number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
Bill and Ted's
Excellent! Excellent!
Excellent Adventure.
Party on, dude.
What do you all think of this trailer?
That's fantastic.
It's so good, and I just love that they're naming all of the figures from history, and then George Carlin.
Yeah. Who sadly is now a figure from history.
It's true.
Oh, that's sad to think of, actually.
So Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was released February 17th, 1989. It was directed by Stephen Herrick, written by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, and starred Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, and George Carlin.
Bill and Ted are high school students on the verge of failing their history class. If they fail, Ted will be sent to Alaskan Military Academy, and it will break up their band Wild Stallions. While ineffectually cramming for their history report at the Circle K, Bill and Ted are surprised by the appearance of Rufus, an emissary from the future. Rufus tells Bill and Ted that it's vitally important to the future of humanity that they pass their history test, and he leaves them a time-traveling telephone booth which will allow them to witness history firsthand. After they accidentally bring Napoleon Bonaparte to modern-day San Dimas, Bill and Ted decide that rather than just witnessing history, they will collect historical figures from many different time periods in order to get an A+ on their report. Along the way, they also fall in love with a pair of medieval princesses.
When I really look at this premise for this movie, I'm like, wow, they really swung for the fences on this one, but I love it.
I was thinking that too when I was rewatching this the other day. Like, it is such an out there premise that it's crazy that it even like came together, and it's hard to imagine like being the studio seeing the script and thinking, yeah, let's greenlight this, you know.
So I learned a ton of interesting facts about this movie. A lot of it is thanks to the fact that, you know, we just had Bill and Ted Face the Music come out. So there were a ton of retrospective articles out there to look at about the film. So some facts. First of all, Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson wrote the Bill and Ted script on spec. And it was based on an improv bit that they've been doing about two fairly stupid guys who talk about world events. And they were just doing improv, like playing with their friends, even. They weren't like necessarily doing improv for actual audiences. They were just doing improv for fun. Chris Matheson is the one who would play Bill, and Ed Solomon is the one who would play Ted. And Chris Matheson's father was Richard Matheson, the prolific author who, among other things, wrote the book Big Time Return and the movie based on it, Somewhere in Time, which we already covered in episode 42 of Every Rom Com, where you can actually also hear my brother here talk. So I thought that was such an interesting coincidence. I had no idea before we actually started working on this.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
I guess time travel runs in the family. So yeah. There you go. So Richard Matheson actually encouraged his son, Chris, to change their improv bit into a screenplay, and he later helped him shop the script around. Solomon and Matheson wrote the outline for the script in 3 days and the first draft of the script in 4 days because they'd just been improvising this so long. It was really easy for them to like do the voice of the characters, essentially. Okay, so the original script had a lot of differences from the final movie. So first of all, the time travel originally took place in a van, and an early title for the movie was Bill and Ted's Time Van.
I remember finding out about that right before the third movie came out, and I was just like, that kind of blows my mind, you know?
Oh, yeah? In a good way or a bad way?
A little good, little bad. I don't know. Like, it's very cheesy, but like at the same time, it's just the fact that something could be that different, something that's so ingrained in my childhood, you know?
Yeah. And did you hear about these other differences I'm about to list? Like, did you read some of those articles?
Some of it, yeah. I don't think all of these little facts, but some of them for sure. And each one, I'm just kind of like my mind just exploding a little bit. But yeah,
I find it interesting they went with the phone booth. It seems like a strange Americanized version of the Doctor Who police booth TARDIS.
Yeah, so funny enough, Stephen Herrick, the director, is the one who came up with the phone booth because the studio didn't want a van because the studio said it would be too much like Back to the Future, right? Because it was also a car, right? Yeah. So Stephen Herrick came up with the phone booth, but according to Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon anyway, Herrick and none of them had heard of Doctor Who. So it was just like some kind of weird coincidence. Like, so yeah, who knows? But that's what they say. So yeah, so other changes from the original script. Rufus was originally going to be a friend of Bill and Ted's, who was a 28-year-old high school sophomore who owned the van. Instead of Napoleon, Bill and Ted were originally going to accidentally go to Nazi Germany and strand Hitler in San Dimas.
Amazing.
Which could have been interesting, but I don't know if it would have had the same mass appeal, you know? Like, it'd be a little more controversial, perhaps. Other early possibilities in the script involved landing the van on the deck of the Titanic, accidentally killing Julius Caesar, and befriending a caveman. So those are all things that almost happened in this movie.
All would have worked.
Yeah. The Titanic would have made a very different tone, I think, you know?
I'm glad they didn't befriend a caveman because that gave more airspace for Encino Man a few years later.
That's right.
Oh, yep. That's true. Yeah. So, in terms of the casting, an initial casting choice for Rufus was Eddie Van Halen, but the film apparently was not high budget enough to like really realistically cast him. They wanted musicians though in a lot of these roles. So the three people Bill and Ted meet in the future were originally going to be cast as the members of ZZ Top. But again, they couldn't afford that. So instead they got members of the E Street Band, the Tubes, and the Motels. So I didn't realize that all three of those were like musicians. I just thought they were random, supporting actors. Did any of you recognize them?
I didn't know.
No, I did not.
Okay, so then in terms of production, the movie was originally made in 1987, but it didn't get released until 1989 because De Laurentiis Entertainment went bankrupt. So originally they thought maybe this movie wasn't going to come out at all. And though the movie was set in San Dimas, California, which is a city 30 miles east of LA, it was mainly filmed in Phoenix, Arizona. But this is cool. They also shot for 2 weeks in Italy, where they shot the ancient Greek and medieval scenes. But you know what? I had no idea those scenes were actually filmed in Europe. I thought they looked a little cheesy to me. Did you feel the same way about it?
It looked absolutely European to me.
It did? Okay.
It did. Yeah.
I thought they were sets, so
the tree species, the trees were that's what tipped me off is they had some beautiful huge beech trees, and it's hard to find beech trees that wide in North America. So,
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I thought it looked really like low rent kind of stuff. So I'm really surprised that they actually went to Italy. The movie had a budget of about $8 to $10 million, but it went on to gross $40.4 million. So a modest success, I would say. It made back a lot of money.
And I mean, and it's definitely the kind of movie that went on to do plenty of money on, home video and all that. So
yeah, that era was very good for like being able to put out these movies that had like maybe modest success in theater, but then video was an exploding market. So
it was just a different world for movies.
Yeah. So Bill and Ted's would eventually have 2 sequels, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey in 1991 and Bill and Ted Face the Music in 2020. And I didn't know this. There were a couple of TV shows. Did either of you watch these TV shows?
I didn't. I not that I remember anyway. It's possible because I mean I loved Bill and Ted as a kid, but I don't think I did. And I think they're really hard to find nowadays, isn't that right?
I didn't actually go looking for them. Old me would have totally gone looking for them when I had more time. Yeah. I actually, when we did Clueless, I watched episodes of the Clueless television show. That's how dedicated I usually am.
Oh, I remember that show.
But in this case, I didn't get around to it. Apparently, there's 13 episodes of a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure animated show, and that had voice work from all the original stars. But in 1992, there was also a very short-lived live action series based on the movies without the original cast. And I can really see why that would not succeed very well. Oh, and there was a lot of merchandising related to Bill and Ted, apparently, including video games, action figures, and a cereal.
I think there was comic books too.
Yeah.
I could swear I remember having a comic book back then, and I probably played at least 1 or 2 of the video games.
Yeah, I do remember reading that there were comic books. Yeah, that's definitely true. So, yeah. I didn't eat the cereal. There was always a cereal for everything. I think we had the Ghostbuster cereal in our house at one point.
Yes, we did.
That was a good one.
Yep.
I can't remember even what any of these cereals tasted like. Probably not
sugar.
So good.
Tasted like kind of like Captain Crunch actually a bit. The Ghost, but with marshmallows in it, is what I recall.
Oh yeah, the marshmallows were the little ghosts.
Ghosts, yeah, remember the ghosts, and then there was a Slimer one that was green.
Yes,
as well. Yes.
Excellent. Now I really want to know what was in the Bill and Ted. I think maybe a little phone boost would have been good. That would be good. Okay, so some of the stars reflected recently on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Alex Winter told The Guardian in 2020 that he thought representing close friendship against the craziness of the world is a large part of what's carried the films. The films are written by 2 very close friends, are performed by 2 very close friends, and there's a sincerity to this that people enjoy. And I think, that is part of the appeal of the film. It's very good-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter did indeed become friends even before they were cast in the roles. Winter said in GamesRadar.com, "We both rode motorcycles, we'd go to auditions, and then we'd go back to one or the other's house and just play bass." They've remained friends throughout the years, and Reeves has actually worked on several of Winter's directorial projects, like in small ways. And writer Chris Matheson talked to Games Radar about the film's legacy, saying both Ed and I are very appreciative of the fact that somehow the meme we put out into the world was be excellent to each other, which is a really nice meme to have out there. We're both really happy about that. So, yeah, a little bit about the history of the movie. And now, so much for like the making of the movie. I want to know about your history with this movie. And David, I'm going to go ahead and start with you because I kind of know my brothers. I'm going to let you talk too, Ishtar. Don't worry for yourself.
No problemo.
But what's your history with this movie, David? When did you see it? Like, have you watched it over the years? And what's been your opinion about it over the years?
So I watched it in the theater when it first came out. I would have been 8 at the time, and it was just like the coolest movie that ever existed when it came out. And I thought that they were the absolute best and the coolest people ever, and I loved it. But then I basically don't really remember watching it over the years. I don't know why. And I remember when the recent one in 2020 was coming out, I rewatched the first two movies, and part of my takeaway from rewatching them was like, why haven't I been just rewatching Bill and Ted every few years for the last 20 years? Like, I love these guys, and so yeah, I don't know why they just kind of got lost to time for me, but I'm really happy that since then now I've seen this one twice, and I'm probably going to rewatch Bogus Journey one of these days too. But yeah, it's just such a fun movie, and it so perfectly captures the 80s and just that kind of a lifestyle, just rock and roll and just goofing around.
So just out of curiosity, like who did you see the movie with? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I would imagine my parents probably went with me, but I don't remember if I also had like friends or maybe they even just dropped me off or something. But definitely I remember seeing it in the theater though.
And you never had it on videotape or like whatever?
I probably had it. I just don't remember it being a movie that I like watched over and over again, but I'm
Okay.
sure I at least had it and probably watched it a couple of times at home.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had a very different experience. If I recall, Ishtar, I don't remember seeing it in the theater. Did you? You don't remember seeing it in the theater, do you?
I do not at all remember seeing it in the theater.
Yeah, I just remember it sort of appearing on videotape one day. I mean, I'm sure it didn't literally just appear, but like I just remember watching it like all the time on videotape. Yeah. I think the only things we watched more were maybe the Indiana Jones movies and the original Star Wars movies. Like, does that sound about right to you? And Ghostbusters, of course, clearly.
Yeah, but that's a different category in our upbringing.
It could have appeared if you told your past self to buy the tape in the future.
Exactly.
I think Labyrinth was closely behind Bill and Ted's, but I think we watched Bill and Ted's or the first video of JFK.
That was later.
Yeah, that was later.
Yeah, I always fell asleep for some reason, like near the end of the first tape of the two-tape edition of JFK. Yeah, it's really
because you were a teenager and you after like the soda, you had a sugar crash. And after school, you were just down for the count. And I'd put the second tape in and watch the rest of JFK every time.
Okay.
We definitely watched Bill and Ted's more. And for some reason, that Bill and Ted's, I'm glad you asked me to do this one because Bill and Ted's, for some reason, tracks is in a certain way one of the, I don't know, foundational films of my growing up experience in that TV room.
Mm-hmm.
The comings and goings. I don't know why exactly. There are other movies maybe that I thought were more interesting or better made, but there was something about Bill and Ted's that was just back. Maybe it was having both Lincoln and Napoleon in one film.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. And certainly that I don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any more thoughts about it, Ishtar? Do you remember like how old you were when you watched it? Did you remember having a favorable, like you also probably already like were quite a Lincoln scholar by the time you watched it, I would say.
Already. I was actually, that was the heart of my Lincoln obsession. And I was about to segue into Napoleon.
So like you weren't disturbed by the fact Lincoln was behaving very strangely in this film? Like you were just like, this seems good?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, everybody got a pass, basically.
Do you think there were either of you, this question actually goes out to either of you, do you think there were any historical figures you learned about first by watching them in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
All of them.
Oh.
I was always a bad student. No, I mean, I probably knew who these people were, but I definitely got a little bit of an extra education about them, even if it's a little skewed by the comedy of it all. But certainly, like, this was my, understanding of these people for a long, long time.
Well, it's better than thinking that Caesar was a salad dressing dude. So
Sure.
yeah, I remember going to philosophy class in college, and even then, like, still there was the thought in my head, the greatest wisdom consists in knowing that you know nothing. And I was like, I've totally got Socrates covered.
Nice.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just finish up. Like I said, I feel like this videotape just appeared one day. Watched this movie like all the time with my brother, and then I continue to watch it like about once a year, once every 2 years. I've owned a copy of it like my whole adult life. And we'll talk about the sequels and our opinions of those later because they kind of entail a little bit of a spoiler, I think. So, fair enough?
Sure.
Fair enough.
We're going to move on now to our cast and crew, and I get to introduce Keanu Reeves. So, Keanu Reeves was born in 1964 in Beirut, Lebanon, but he was primarily raised in Toronto, Canada. His mother was an English performer and costume designer, and his father was a Hawaiian geologist, but he mainly lived with his mother. Reeves decided to be an actor at 15 and dropped out of school at 17. He worked in TV for a few years until his film debut in 1986 in the movie Young Blood. I've never heard of that, but that same year, 1986, he attracted critical attention for his role in River's Edge. And he appeared in several other movies before Bill and Ted's, including Dangerous Liaisons. So Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was definitely his breakout role, and then he went on to appear in both Bill and Ted sequels and the animated series. And he had quite a run in the late 80s and early 90s. He also appeared in movies including Parenthood, Point Break, My Own Private Idaho, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Much Ado About Nothing. But it was kind of 94 when he had a second breakout role in the Jan de Bont film Speed, opposite Sandra Bullock and Dennis Hopper. And I remember really loving that film when it came out as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in the late 90s, Reeves appeared in some kind of less successful movies, including A Walk in the Clouds and The Devil's Advocate, although I love The Devil's Advocate
it's a
also.
fantastic film.
Yeah. But then he found huge success with the first Matrix movie in 1999, and of course he's gone on to appear in 3 sequels to that movie. And in the 2000s, in addition to Matrix sequels, Reeves also appeared in films including The Gift, Constantine, Something's Gotta Give, A Scanner Darkly, and The Lake House. And then the 2010s again started out a bit slowly, but then in 2014, Reeves starred in John Wick and launching another successful franchise with 3 sequels so far. And I have to tell you, I just watched John Wick for the first time last night, literally.
Nice.
Well, good for you, sis.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't as into it as everybody else. I think it was built up too much for me. I mean, it was fine. I liked it, but yeah, sorry.
Another question. Did you see Constantine?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
I kind of like that one too.
Yeah? Well, apparently there's going to be a sequel, so good news for you.
The big fan following, Constantine.
So then in the 2010s, he also directed his first and so far only film, Man of Tai Chi, which he also appeared in. I feel like I need to see this now. Has anyone seen this?
I haven't. I want to watch that too.
Yeah.
I didn't know he did that, so now I have to watch it.
Right?
Yeah.
Other projects he did in the 2010s included the movies Knock Knock, Destination Wedding, Always Be My Maybe, and the TV show Swedish Dicks. And recently, Reeves has appeared in sequels to Bill and Ted, The Matrix, and John Wick, and he's contributed voice work to the movie DC League of Super Pets and to the video games Cyberpunk 2077 and Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Reeves has right now 1 film in post-production, Ballerina, which that's a John Wick related movie,
it's a
isn't
spinoff.
it? Yeah. Okay. He's also in production on Constantine 2, and he has 3 projects in pre-production, an action comedy called Good Fortune, a horror crime movie called Outcome, and the action movie Berserker, for which Reeves co-wrote the original comic. I didn't even know he was writing comics. I learned a lot. And recently, Reeves began playing bass again with his band Dogstar, which first played together from the mid-90s to the early 2000s. So, clearly we're rebooting everything at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Reeves has occasionally also served as a producer since 2010, and he's also a publisher of books. In 2018, he created the small press X Artists Books, along with his business partner and romantic partner, Alexandra Grant. So Keanu Reeves is kind of the king of it all right now. Any other thoughts on Reeves anybody has, or just anything you want to say about him before we move on?
At the time of this recording, John Wick Chapter 4 is my number one movie of 2023. So
Wow.
Really?
there you go.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay, I got to go see it now.
It's amazing. It's ridiculous, but it's amazing.
Okay, I'll talk about Alex Winter. So Alex Winter is probably best known for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but he's also a writer, director, and producer. Born in England in 1965, his family moved to Missouri when he was 5. His parents were involved in the world of dance, and he started acting at 9 years old. In 1978, he moved with his mom to New Jersey and began acting on and off Broadway. He had good experiences during this time, but in 2018 he revealed that he had been sexually abused as a young actor. Winter told The Guardian that this experience of abuse gave him PTSD for many years, which would eventually lead to him mostly quitting acting in 1993.
Yeah.
For college, he attended the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU and began directing short films. Though he'd previously appeared in a few small roles in TV and movies, his breakout role was in The Lost Boys in 1985. He appeared in a few more films before Bill and Ted, including the period piece Haunted Summer. After Bill and Ted's, he participated in the sequels to that movie, as well as its animated series. He also appeared in movies including Rosalie Goes Shopping and Grand Piano, as well as TV shows including Bones and Robot Chicken. Winter had already been directing shorts and videos since 1985, but in 1993 he co-wrote and co-directed his first feature, Freaked. Keanu Reeves has an uncredited role in that film. In 1999, he wrote and directed the thriller movie Fever. In the 2010s, Winter began mainly working as a writer, producer, and director of documentaries. His documentaries include Downloaded, Deep Web, The Panama Papers, Showbiz Kids, and The YouTube Effect.
Yeah, I had no idea he was a documentary director, and his documentary topics sound kind of interesting.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, you see a trend. I've actually now I know I've watched one of his documentaries without knowing it was one of his documentaries. I watched
really?
The Panama Papers.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've heard the YouTube Effect is great. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, though. That came out this year.
Nice.
So Winters has 2 movies in post-production as an actor, Absolute Dominion and Destroy All Neighbors. He is also in pre-production as a director and actor on the movie Adulthood.
I had no idea, really, that Alex Winter had done so many things. I'm really glad to know that he's been up to so much over the years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Grand Piano. That is a movie I love. He is a small role in it, but he's really great in it, and it's such a good movie.
Great.
So George Carlin plays Rufus. George Carlin, primarily a stand-up comedian, but also appeared in TV and movies, including, of course, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He was born in the Bronx in 1937 and raised in Manhattan. His mother left his alcoholic father and raised him and his brother on her own. He went to Catholic school and served as an altar boy, which he would later become an atheist, and obviously religion was a big part of his act. He dropped out of high school and then enlisted in the Air Force at 17. He began working in radio while in the Air Force, and after he left the Air Force, it became his job again, and he then moved to Hollywood. Comedian Lenny Bruce heard the show and helped get Carlin a booking at The Tonight Show. Carlin began appearing regularly on TV, including The Tonight Show, The Ed Sullivan Show, Merv Griffin Show, and more. He also began doing his comedy routine in Las Vegas. In 1967, he released his first solo comedy album and would release 18 more albums throughout his life. In 1968, he had his first credited film role in the movie With Six You Get Egg Roll. In the 70s, his comedy became more critical of American culture. In 1972, he was arrested in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for disorderly conduct after performing his famous routine 7 Words You Can't Say on Television. The charges were later dropped. The routine later prompted a Supreme Court case regarding free speech on radio airwaves. It was decided that between the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., there could be limits on free speech.
And I just want to interject something here. So we heard that he was arrested in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then shamefully, this is about our hometown Ishtar. Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently in the 1970s, quote, he was advised to leave town when an angry audience threatened him at the Playboy Club in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin for joking about the Vietnam War, end quote. That's from the New York Times. So Milwaukee arrested him, and in Lake Geneva, they threatened to, hurt him if he, didn't get out of town. So
I mean, I'm sure some of those awful people at the club were from Chicago, though.
Well,
so
maybe, yeah. There's a rivalry between Wisconsin and Illinois that my brother's alluding to here as well.
Yes,
but I'm just sad that Wisconsin twice did this to George Carlin. I'm sorry, George Carlin. Yeah.
Oh, Wisconsin. In 1975, he was the first host of Saturday Night Live. And in 1976, he made another film appearance in Car Wash. And then in 77, he performed his first of many stand-up comedy specials for HBO. Before Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, he also appeared on Welcome Back, Kotter, in the movie Outrageous Fortune, and he began narrating the animated Thomas and Friends children's show.
Does that blow your mind or what? Like, I'm just
That is crazy.
Oh, I remember that. It was wonderful. He was a great Mr. Conductor.
He had such a great voice. So, I mean, it makes sense that he could do anything, So,
yeah.
In addition to the original Bill and Ted movie, Carlin also reprised his role for the Bill and Ted animated series, as well as Bogus Journey, and archival footage was used to give him a small cameo in Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Which was not horrible. Like, oftentimes when they do that, I hate it, but like the way they did it in Face the Music, I felt was sort of respectful. I don't know.
Yeah, it was, they really didn't have much to work with, and it was respectful enough, I think. Certainly more than some other examples.
Yeah.
In the 90s, Carlin appeared in the movie The Prince of Tides and began playing Mr. Conductor on the children's show Shining Time Station, as well as continuing his work on Thomas and Friends. In 94 and 95, he also appeared in his own TV show, The George Carlin Show. Then in 1997, he wrote the first of several comedy books, Brain Droppings. In 1999, he appeared in his first Kevin Smith movie, Dogma, and he would later appear in a small role in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and as Ben Affleck's father in Smith's rom-com Jersey Girl.
Yeah.
Other film roles in the 2000s included Scary Movie 3, voice work in Cars, and Happily and Ever After. He died of heart failure in 2008 at age 71 and was posthumously awarded the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2008 and is frequently listed as one of the top 3 American comedians of all time. I'd say number 1, really. And also, Jen, I don't know if you know this when you put me to introduce George Carlin on this, but a friend of our family's, he was a customer of my family's record store, Wax Trax. And he visited us like many times when we originally had the store in Pennsylvania. And then we, in 1998, moved to Las Vegas, where I am now. And he came in all the time right up until his death. And I think we were at his last show, actually.
Wait, who George Carlin came into your shop?
All the time.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And I think him and my dad might have even went to dinner once or twice. Like,
wow.
Yeah, like they talked all the time. And he was a big collector of like old soul music and doo-wop and stuff like that. And my dad has like one of the best collections in the country. And so he would constantly be getting his stuff from my dad.
No, I had no idea there was that connection there. That's really cool. I just know that like when we initially talked about doing the show, you were saying something about how cool George Carlin was. And so I'm like, all right, David gets to introduce George Carlin then.
He's the best. He's the best. And backstage at one of his shows, he called me a little shit once.
What did you do to earn this?
Oh, I just was standing there. I had braids at the time. I looked ridiculous. And he said, and what's the little shit been up to?
I see. Okay, more like that.
Yeah.
So now that we've done the cast and crew here, I think we can look now at the actual film. So first of all, The credit sequence. Okay, it's a testament to how many times I saw this movie that I have like this memory of feeling that the credit sequence was like interminably long. But then when I rewatched it, I'm like, it's actually not actually that long. It's just when you're a kid, it feels really long, I think.
I just watched it last night. It is too long.
Okay, well, I was like, I remembered it being much longer than it was. Like, I remember just like either fast forwarding through it or just being really bored when I was a kid. And it's to the song Breakaway by Big Pig. That's the name of the band, apparently, Big Pig. And it's like set against this like vaguely futuristic computer graphic background or something.
Yeah, that's a real 80s, hallmark. These like long, arbitrary credit sequences. So
Watching that beginning, all the progress that I made in 23 years of meditation was lost in 5 minutes.
Why? Because you were suddenly so impatient?
I lost all my equanimity, and I have to start all over again.
Sounds good.
I think it is too long.
Yeah. I'm really sorry that like this podcast has caused this problem, Ishtar. Yeah.
Oh, it's not. It's all right.
No biggie.
Yeah, no biggie.
So when we finally get out of the credits sequence, we get George Carlin's character Rufus narrating about the year 2688 in San Dimas, California. I'm really impressed that the world is still around, to be honest. So, and not only is the world still around, but everything is apparently clean.
Even the dirt.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Even the dirt's clean.
What is this obsession with like the best thing that could possibly happen in the future being that everything is clean? I wonder.
Yeah, there's some darkness there, I sense.
Is it like
actually a really good question?
Is it like that LA was so smoggy and dirty or something, like in the 80s or something, and so being clean is the best thing that can be imagined?
Maybe.
I don't know.
It's a general sort of a futurist, mid-century futurist aesthetic.
Yeah.
Everything's always clean and Jetsony.
Yeah.
And people are wearing shiny space suits and in various films and TV programs. So I do think there's a weird cleanliness vibe going on. Modernist architecture I find to be often quite sterile.
Yeah, there's always a minimalist aesthetic. Like there's never any tchotchkes lying around. Like you're on a spaceship. Like forget about like a bookshelf. No, you're not getting it.
Right. Corbusier in his architecture even decided to lift his buildings above the ground to, quote, free them from the ground.
Huh.
So that started the whole put a building on stilts kind of practice. And I always preferred, Frank Lloyd Wright, keep it on the ground and make it horizontal. And
all right, before we get too far afield into architecture, but I do appreciate your observation though, and I think there's something to it as well. It's that this future aesthetic is so bizarre to me in the entire movie, but it's like very like everything in this movie, everything's kind of not meant to be taken too seriously, probably, right?
True.
Sure.
Yeah. But speaking of not taking things too seriously, the other good things about the future are apparently the bowling averages are what? Like
way up.
Bowling is way up. Mini golf averages are way down.
Way down. Yeah.
And we have, I can't remember how he describes the water slides, but there are many
most
water
excellent
slides.
water slides.
Oh, you've got it all. Did you write this down or did you just remember it?
I just remembered. I watched it last night. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, after being introduced to the future, we now cut to the garage where Bill and Ted are filming each other, failing to play rock music. And like this scene really introduces you to their characters. They're debating about whether they should learn to play their instruments, film a rock video, or get Eddie Van Halen first to make their band successful.
I mean, they just perfectly capture that, kind of, goofball rock and roll aesthetic so well in this whole opening. Like we know exactly who they are immediately.
They have video cameras, which was still kind of a new thing to be like using a camcorder to record each other. And this is like just a few years after MTV. So
yeah, the American middle class in this film is doing pretty well for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not much better than they are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at 80s films, they all look rich now. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now we're going to go to Bill and Ted's history class, and I've got a little clip of Bill and Ted at their history class. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
So, Bill, what you're telling me, essentially, is that Napoleon was a short, dead dude.
Well, yeah.
You totally blew it, dude.
Ted, stand up.
Stand up?
Yes, son, stand up. Now, who was Joan of Arc?
Noah's wife?
Listen, guys, don't forget, tomorrow, final report, 1:30 to 3:30, okay?
Hey, guys.
Mr. Ryan, before you say anything, my distinguished colleague Ted and I wish to express to you our thanks for all the things we have learned in your class.
And what have you learned?
We've learned that the world has a great history.
Yes, and that thanks to great leaders such as Genghis Khan, Joan of Arc, and Socratic method, the world is full of history.
It seems to me the only thing you've learned is that Caesar is a salad dressing dude. Bill, Ted, this is really quite simple. You have flunked every section of this class. Now, unless you get an A+ on your final oral report tomorrow, guys, I have no choice but to flunk the both of you.
Yep. So I really like Bernie Casey plays Mr. Ryan in this film, and I always admired his character. Actually, I thought his acting is, I think, really good in this. Like, he's just playing a typical history teacher. Did anyone else have him as a standout, or?
Oh yeah, I think he's an excellent history teacher in the film. Yeah, he actually seems ideal.
Yeah, and you could kind of tell that he gets a little bit of a kick out of them and their shtick, even though he really wants them to better themselves.
Yeah. And Bernie Casey particularly, I remembered him from being in Revenge of the Nerds when we even first saw this movie, because that was another movie we had watched a lot. I don't think that one ages nearly as well as Bill and Ted's, but
sure.
Yeah, but not any fault of Bernie Casey's. But yeah, so he's Mr. Ryan, and we have this classic situation where people are about to flunk, and in this movie it's very important that they pass because otherwise their band is going to break up. We also get to know a little bit about Bill and Ted as characters here. So they're kind of faking their way through things, reading the board behind Mr. Ryan, calling Socratic method an important historical figure, that kind of thing. I feel like in the 80s, these characters seemed pretty innocent, but there's definitely been criticism of this movie for making it seem cool to fake your way through things or be dumb. What do you all think about that?
I mean, that's basically what I've done my whole life. So
Well, I think you've got your own talents though, certainly, David. I think it's people have employed it to stuff I don't know, George W. Bush being president, not to get too political here or something, but politicians kind of faking their way through, pretending to know things, kind of thing.
Did Winnie the Pooh lead to idiotic politicians? I don't think so. I think these two are sort of in the Taoist idiot tradition.
Okay.
And I don't think they eroded civil society.
I didn't know there was a Taoist idiot tradition. I don't think we have too much time to get into it, but can you summarize that?
Well, you just have these characters who are kind of fools.
Yeah.
Having adventures and stumbling around and proving themselves wise in their foolishness repeatedly. Kind of an old trope.
So yeah, actually the writers, Solomon and Matheson, said they didn't really conceive of Bill and Ted as stoners, which is another assumption people have made about the characters. They just kind of call them stoners, even though we never see them smoke pot or even allude to smoking pot in the movie. They said rather than being a stoner archetype, they saw them as being, quote, open to everything. So that's from the special features on the Blu-ray. I don't know, did either of you assume that they were stoners? I kind of never did.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Although, certainly all of the stoner duos, that have come since, feel a lot like Bill and Ted. And so it's understandable why some people might make that assumption, but yeah, no, I don't think so. And I also don't think you ever see them drink either. I mean, they order beers at one point, but they
Oh,
don't even
yeah.
drink them.
Yeah, that's true. They're excited to order the beers, though.
Yeah, but they're just nice and sweet.
Yeah, I tend to think they've just had too much sun exposure.
Yes,
You
there
know,
you go.
they just feel like Southern California to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They don't even need any drugs. They are the drug now.
Yeah, that's true. This is another funny thing I learned about this. So director Stephen Herrick apparently had a particular direction he would give Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves throughout the shooting. He told The Hollywood Reporter, "I ended up distilling it to one phrase that I used to tell both Alex and Keanu. I need more Labrador Retriever." Because I felt that these guys were sort of like lovable labs, and weirdly enough, they understood what I was talking about. And once you have heard that, once you've read that quote, and you go back and watch the movie, you can completely see where they're being more like a dog.
Yeah, the eyes, the head nods, the body movement,
Yeah.
I love that. Dogs don't have a bad bone in their body. You know,
Yeah.
they're just perfect little orbs of awesome.
Especially Labrador retrievers.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's another thing. They're playing whether it's from the Taoist tradition or from a Western tradition, they're playing the fool. They're playing the innocent fool who discovers the pot of gold because they don't know they can't.
True. Yeah, and I love their speaking of the going with the lab thing some more, just their movements are so amazing. Like their like physical acting. Like the part where Mr. Ryan says Ted and Ted stands up. Like the way Keanu Reeves actually stands up and moves. Like everything about his body language is amazing in a way I can't quite describe. I don't know. Do either of you have a good description for it? I can't. It just he's so loose with his movement and so almost like he's being pulled around in a way.
He moves like life force is either pushing or pulling his body, and his body is kind of catching up to it and being projected by it.
And those big eyes and that floppy hair, it's just like all so perfect.
Oh yeah, so good. Not to go on a tangent, but I don't know if you guys saw yesterday. It was going viral on Twitter. There was a video from Bogus Journey of Hal Landon Jr. as Ted's dad, and when Ted like kind of takes him over, and he so perfectly is doing the Ted movements.
Yeah,
it's an amazing performance.
Yeah, I did. When I watched Bogus Journey again, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like I did, that was one of the standout moments for me in the movie was that opportunity for him to play that. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. One more thing I wanted to mention is like the language use in this movie is so interesting. Like they simultaneously have this very limited vocabulary where everything is like excellent or bogus or woe, but then they also like have a lot of adverbs, egregiously, heinously, like
that
like
stuff's all great.
It's such an interesting voice that Matheson and Solomon gave these characters, although it should be said that they wrote the characters totally interchangeably when they wrote the script. They didn't care who they were giving dialogue to, so they kind of speak in one voice.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, all young people kind of, they get all of their little words and phrases and stuff from the same sources. So
yeah, I think it also lends to their kind of bromance aspect too, though. You know how they kind of function as a unit.
Sure.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's sort of an unintentional benefit in a way.
Yeah.
All right, and then we'll talk a little bit. You mentioned already, David. Ted's father is one of the characters here. Let's talk a little bit about their families. So first, neither of them has an actual mom, which I found interesting. They don't even mention their moms.
I didn't even realize that until right now. That's a really good point.
Yeah, like in a modern teen movie, you'd have to make like a big deal out of that. That would have to be some sort of psychological thing that they were dealing with. And in this movie, it's just like, nope, we're moving on.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Which definitely gives us more plot momentum, right? Like in modern movies, I think there's almost too much psychological baggage all the time,
I almost wonder if that's something Solomon and Matheson dealt with. Maybe it's something they, together, they both maybe had that experience. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I didn't look up much about their backgrounds. That would be an interesting idea. There's also just a lot of movies without moms in the world. If you look at the world of teen movies, there's a lot of missing moms. The world of like Disney movies, there's a lot of missing moms. I don't know what it is. Of course, this clears the way for Missy, who is Bill's stepmom, who is a very young, attractive blonde girl who was a senior when they were freshmen. Any either of you fancy Missy when you were younger?
No.
I mean, probably, but I don't really remember.
Yeah. Well, they both find her attractive in the movie. There's this one part where they're kind of looking at her cleavage, but like there's almost no cleavage till it got there. It's interesting. But it's played as this like really sexy moment.
They're just idiots. They don't know what they want.
No, they don't.
I find it kind of innocent again, because like in a maybe 2000s movie, there would have been a lot of cleavage there, right? You would have seen a lot of the breast. In this movie, there's just this tiny peak, and it's just this, but they're still kind of peeking.
It's another world. They're very innocent beings.
Yeah.
And no mothers around, whether that probably wasn't an intentional choice, but it kind of gives a sense of that they come from nowhere. Like I get the sense that their mother is California in some way. That's
wow. I feel like you just wrote an academic paper about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure without meaning to.
We tried.
That would be like a line in it, for real.
I like it.
Their mother was California, an examination of the motherlessness of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah,
by Thomas
exactly.
Howell.
Exactly.
It sounds like a Red Hot Chili Peppers song.
Which one?
That's even better.
Their mother.
Why
was
wasn't Flea in this film? Why wasn't Flea or Anthony Kiedis in this film?
Because they weren't popular yet, probably.
Getting there. They would have been cheap enough at this point.
Yeah, what's interesting actually, now that you bring this up, since this movie is so like focused on music, it would have been really interesting if it had come out like 3-4 years later in the beginning of the grunge era, rather than in this 80s metal thing that was still kind of like vaguely happening at the time. Like instead of Eddie Van Halen, they're talking about Pearl Jam, or they're talking about Nirvana. Totally different vibe.
Oh, totally.
Would not have worked with these two. They can't be rain soaked. They need to be sun washed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows you like the huge cultural change that was happening like at that time in our history, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, we're going far afield, but it's interesting. It's an interesting field. So we also see Ted's dad, and he threatens Ted that he's going to go to the military academy if he flunks history. And actually, I don't even think he's waiting to see if he flunks history. I think he's just basically, you're going to the military academy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, we now come to the scene where Bill and Ted are going to first confront time travel. Initially, they're just hanging out at the Circle K, which is apparently a convenience store. You live out west, David. Is this a real place that you've been to, or?
I already brought up Wax Trax once. Circle K is literally directly across from our store.
Nice.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of them.
And until recently, I think that Circle K was going to be decommissioned, the one that was used in the filming.
I think you're right. I think I saw something about that.
Yeah.
So Bill and Ted are like sitting in front of the convenience store and asking random passerbys historical questions. Ted goes up to a lady, "Excuse me, when did the Mongols rule China?" And then the lady who works at the Circle K says, "I don't know. I just work here." I would like to try this method of learning about history sometime. I think it would be interesting.
Oh yeah.
That could be like the Socratic method. Go around asking people in the Agora random things.
I do not even know what the Agora is. So
the marketplace where Socrates hung out.
All right.
Yeah, I was making a joke. The method isn't a random thing, as you know, but
yeah.
Your
joke is very sophisticated, Ishtar. This is why we need you here.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I always loved this scene when I was a kid, though. I thought it was so funny. And here, I've got a puzzle piece, David. I don't want to steal your thunder, but like they're sitting in front of a convenience store, much like in about 4 or 5 years, Jay and Silent Bob would be sitting in front of a convenience store.
Oh, absolutely. Really, every stoner duo, you could talk about was inspired by Bill and Ted, but definitely hanging out in front of the convenience store is, directly from there. And then you could also, some of the imagery of the time travel, you can go and say inspired this movie, Back to the Future. There's a lot of wind and lightning bolts and all those kind of things going on in the visuals here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I don't know if I've seen a couple other time travel movies, but I can't remember Like maybe Time After Time had some lightning effect. Do you remember Ishtar if it did or not?
No, I don't remember the effects in that one.
Okay. Well,
Well, I
yeah.
think the Terminator did it too. Also, wind and lightning
Yes.
effects and stuff. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean that definitely like kind of goes with the the whole motif of time travel, I guess.
Yeah. Something impressive has to happen, basically. You can't just lie down on a bed like Christopher Reeve does in Somewhere in Time.
That was the best. That's the best.
It is actually the best, but yeah, we're going for a different aesthetic here for sure.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, we have the wind and the lightning. All of a sudden, the telephone booth lands in the middle of the parking lot, and Rufus comes up to Bill and Ted and says, "Gentlemen, I'm here to help you with your history report." And then the best line in the movie, in my opinion, Ted says, "Strange things are afoot at the Circle K."
Perfect.
Yep.
It's like Shakespearean, in a sense, that line.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Yeah, I think of convenience stores. I kind of always had, like I wanted to go work at Plaid Pantry so badly. I think of them as sort of liminal spaces where anything can happen. And I don't think it's because of this movie.
Really?
I think there's something about convenience stores, especially ones that are open late.
Yeah.
All sorts of different. They're very ephemeral that the people come in. Anything can happen there. They're mystical places. In the modern sense, I think it's a wonderful place to have a time travel adventure kickoff.
I can actually kind of see that. I can feel it. I'm with you there. Well, in any case, like we're in the space of the magical convenience store, and Bill and Ted, the rest of the scene, Bill and Ted meet themselves from the future. They come in another time travel phone booth and tell Bill and Ted to listen to Rufus, basically. And this is where we get the 69 dude thing. Like, if you're us, what number am I thinking of? 69, dude. We have that whole conversation. And the time travel logic here makes zero sense to me, though. So first of all, like, they need to tell themselves to go traveling in the future, but they already had to have gone traveling. It's like one of those circles, like the watch and Somewhere in Time. Like, where does this cycle begin?
No, absolutely. But every time travel thing doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There's never been the only. I mean, this is jumping ahead, but the only time travel thing ever that makes sense is the keys. That is. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, maybe.
The circularity thing is the element that does make sense. What doesn't make sense, but I understand why they did it, was to have time running in San Dimas. That I think they just had to put into to add stakes.
Yeah.
Because there wouldn't be any stakes if it was like proper time travel. You could just fuck around forever.
Yeah.
And there'd be no pressure. So I think that's the only reason they felt they had to do that.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I feel like later they must have fucked around forever to like get some of the results in their history presentation. I'm just saying, I'll talk about that later, but like, yeah, it doesn't always seem to add up to me.
We don't know where the trash can comes from. That goes on the dad. Like, remember the trash can? So they're having to do a lot of this shit, and I didn't see any evidence. Was he hanging on the ceiling to drop the trash can? I didn't see him in the shot. It had to come, anyways.
Okay, we're getting too far ahead of ourselves now, but we'll get to that when we get to the end. Yeah, okay. There's like, I don't feel like the time travel rules make a hell of a lot of sense. Like, we did a whole time travel series for Every Rom Com where we dug into like theories of time travel. I think Happy Death Day to You, we got into that a little bit in depth, like on what the theories are. But yeah, these aren't them, put it that way. That's okay. All right, so let's get to the time machine itself. So again, the time travel takes place in a phone booth, which, what do you think kids these days, like, they see this and what do they even think about this phone booth, I wonder?
What a weird TARDIS.
I think a lot of kids these days probably think of phone booths as that thing from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah.
That could be. Yeah. Like, at the time, though, this was still like a thing, like where, a phone booth is another public ephemeral space, as you're talking about, Ishtar.
Yeah.
And apparently, just in terms of the practical effects in the movie, apparently the phone booth time travel sequences really did involve the actors sitting in the phone booth while it was moved on a hydraulic lift. This is a great quote. Alex Winter told The Hollywood Reporter it was a miserable experience and said, quote, "Anything that involved the circuits of time did not go as planned because it was a rickety piece of crap There were 9 or 10 of us teetering on this thing, duct taped to a hydraulic unit against a green screen in a studio in outer Tempe, Arizona, like a death ride canoe from the worst carny ride you've ever been on. End quote.
Sounds like a blast.
Yes, apparently it was quite hot and quite stinky and quite crowded in there.
Well, yeah. Doesn't surprise me.
And then, of course, we get like the special effects, the spectacular circuits of history.
I love those.
Yeah?
Those are wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if they first thought of the visuals for the circuits of history or for the water slides, but clearly there's a link between the water slides and the circuits of history.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the fact that Napoleon, you know, basically has his initiation in both the same way.
That is interesting. Okay. Yeah, we've got some sort of like visual echoes in this film.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I gotcha.
Absolutely. I'll also say, like, I don't think there's any movie that I know time travel is going to be a part of that I'm not excited to see how they visualize the time travel happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's always going to be a draw for me. Maybe I just like psychedelic, weird stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, it's always fun to see what they can come up with.
That's true. Yeah, there has to be a lot of creativity involved in that. Yeah, and I like the way Face the Music sort of honored the like the look of the circuits of history and just made it a little more polished. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
All right, so we mentioned Napoleon. Napoleon has been brought up. The first place they go in the phone booth, Rufus takes him on this journey, is to Austria, 1805. And because I'm a nerd, I went and I looked up like all the dates and time places they mentioned in the movie, and I tried to figure out what was the historical event that would have been going on. And it seems that Solomon and Matheson did plan this sort of mindfully because most of them bring up pretty important events. This looks like it would have been the Battle of Austerlitz in December of 1805, one of Napoleon's greatest victories. According to Britannica.com, quote, Napoleon's 68,000 troops defeated almost 90,000 Russians and Austrians, forcing Austria to make peace with France and keeping Prussia temporarily out of the anti-French alliance. So, yeah, they chose mindfully a place for them to find Napoleon.
That's
I know
cool.
you're a Napoleon fan, Ishtar. Anything you want to comment about it, or?
Well, I mean, they did the best they could. It needed some snow.
Okay.
Austerlitz. Yeah, in Scott's new film, they'll show, I think, Napoleon cutting off the retreat of another army by forcing it to run on a lake and then having his artillery blow holes in the ice.
Oh, so that's the same battle that's in that sequence?
Yeah.
They
did that, but yeah, that's his crowning jewel is Austerlitz as a strategist.
Interesting.
And the Emperor of Russia was so impressed by how Napoleon beat him and his buddies that for a while he became a Napoleon fan. It didn't last that long, but you know he was so enamored with this military genius that he wanted to, you know, buddy up with him.
Man, I did not know. So we're seeing Napoleon sort of at one of the heights of his achievement, and then instead he is accidentally blown into the circuits of history as the time travel machine retreats, and he ends up coming to San Dimas with Bill and Ted. So yeah, I love too that there's no logic. Like these historical figures are missing from their time periods, and like there's no. I mean, were they always just destined to leave and come back?
Yeah.
You can't think too much into it.
I know. I totally ruined About Time with this. You just don't even want to, like, yeah, poor Jason Kleberg had to come on the About Time episode and have me just destroy the logic in that movie. So,
and really none of them, I don't think, gain much. You know, it's like they went to a mall. They didn't read any of their own histories. You know, Lincoln could have had a little bit of a go ahead.
Yeah.
You know, like 3 extra security guards, you know, when we go to see My American Cousin. And Napoleon, you know, could have, you know, got the memo, don't invade Russia.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't learn anything. Joan of Arc, don't trust the Dauphin. He's going to stab you in the back, you know.
Yeah, no benefit was gained. So, yeah, who can say? So just like really quick, like just because like I feel like I need to do this, I'm going to give a few basic Napoleon facts. So the real Napoleon, born 1769, died 1821, ruled France from 1799 to 1814, and also for a short period in 1815. And he was ruled as an emperor over much of Europe for a time. but was eventually defeated and exiled to the island of Elba, and had a famous defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. And Ishtar, if you have anything fast you want to add about Napoleon or why he's important, be my guest.
Oh, fast.
Fast. I mean, like,
Well,
I'm talking like
definitely.
less than a paragraph.
Okay. Definitely a mixed figure. He's both a sort of a bloodthirsty tyrant in one respect. He was quoted as saying, I can afford to lose 30,000 troops in a month. So the numbers of people dying in his wars did not bother him. At the same time, he spread the Code Napoleon around Europe, around the countries that he conquered, which was much more civilized than the bullshit laws that most of those countries were. They were very feudal. So a lot of modern Europe is still built on the Code Napoleon, and the Napoleonic Code did enshrine certain ideas of the Enlightenment. So he's a nuanced. I treat him as a nuanced figure. In certain senses, he was when he invaded Spain and Portugal, like in 1808 or 9, right? He was confident that the Spanish and Portuguese would see them as liberators because they were liberating them from their feudal lords and the Catholic Church. Of course, the populations didn't think so. I guess they wanted, in my opinion, they liked their own bad government to a foreign aggressor's better government. I probably shouldn't say that in certain countries, including the one I live in. A little bit of a Francophile here, but interesting man. Another thing, they invented canned foods for his army because they were, it was inefficient to try to just ravage the countryside wherever you went. So they figured out how to heat and pressurize foods and can them in glass jars. So that's where we get that from, is peas that can last you for a couple years or something like that in a jar.
So what do you think about the way he's portrayed in this film?
Well, it's better than Ian Holm and Time Bandits. We're not going for accuracy. I think it's spirited. He was probably much taller because I think the French foot had 13 inches where the English foot had 12 or something like that. So he was 5 foot something meant something different. So he wasn't as short as we make him out to be. So I think that's kind of been piled on. I don't know. I think it was a wonderful comic send up and actually kind of treats him with a great deal of respect.
Yeah, I actually love the actor who plays Napoleon in this film. It's played by an actor called Terry Camilleri. And like, when I say I love the actor, I love his portrayal because I find that he has so much dignity that he puts into it. He's playing this totally straight. He is just trying to be, what would Napoleon do in any given situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like the look in his eyes all the time. Like, I don't actually have any clips of Napoleon that I'm going to play because most of the great part of this performance is in his face, and it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. His face is so good. All of his little reactions and all that. He's great.
Taught a generation of young Americans how to say shit in French.
That's true.
Yes.
Okay, so they get Napoleon into San Dimas, and they leave Napoleon with Ted's little brother Deacon, who's like this 13-year-old kid. And Deacon seemingly has no idea who the hell Napoleon is, but he just like watches this middle-aged man that's been deposited with him, like, which is amazing.
That kid's great.
Yeah.
So then they go tell Deacon they're going to collect other historical figures. Again, no reaction from Deacon. He's just like, whatever. And then Ted gets into the phone booth and dials a different place in history and says, let's reach out and touch someone, which again, today, nobody would have any idea what that is. That was like a very popular AT&T commercial in the 80s.
Sure.
So now we get to Billy the Kid. They go into to the Old West. That's one of their time periods for their history report. This one is listed as New Mexico, 1879. And apparently this would have been during the Lincoln County War, which lasted between 1878 to 1881, which was a war between competing business interests. And apparently Billy the Kid was a member of the Regulators, which was one side of this war. I don't know if he had a personal interest or if he was just getting paid to be part of that, but
I don't recall.
Yeah, and some basic Billy the Kid facts. He lived from 1859 to 1881. His real name was Henry McCarty, but his alias was William H. Bonney. Orphaned at 15, he began to steal, became a gunfighter and an outlaw, and he is alleged to have killed 21 men during his life. And this is a really interesting thing. So the actor playing Billy the Kid seems like he's in his maybe late 20s, but Billy the Kid was only 21 when he died, and he would have been about 19 during the events of this movie. So he would have looked kind of like Bill and Ted if it had been a real portrayal of Billy the Kid.
Yeah, and he was not a looker either. It looked like he probably had survived smallpox. He's got a heavily pockmarked face, not a great face. So, yeah.
This is like the Bon Jovi version of Billy the Kid.
Exactly.
Yeah. When did Young Guns come out anyway? I don't even know when that movie came out, but I think that was the aesthetic they were kind of going with.
Yeah, or Silverado or something.
Yeah. Now I really want to know if Young Guns was first, though.
I think you mentioned elsewhere that there's sort of a Blazing Saddles thing, but actually their first entrance into Old West world is the guy in the latrine and he's humming and farting.
Yeah.
In his outhouse. So that to me, Blazing Saddles gets in right away.
Sure.
With that farting business. Yeah.
It's so childish, and usually I don't even find that kind of humor funny, but I do find it funny in this movie. Yeah. I can't even explain it.
It's hilarious. He does the guy they had doing it. He did it perfectly, I think. Too. Whoever that man was.
Young Guns was 88, it says, which actually this would have been filmed before Young Guns, so I don't know. It was in the air, maybe. Okay, so in their whole thing in the Old West, it's just like leans on all the Western movie cliches, right? They go into like a bar and there's like the women dressed in like the kind of prostitute outfits and people are gambling. I didn't read anything that said Billy the Kid particularly gambled much, but in this movie he does and cheats people at cards, and yeah, it's a whole thing. Any opinions on this scene? Was it a favorite of yours at all, or?
No.
Yeah, not particularly. I mean, like you said, it just leans into all those, classic Western movie cliches. So it's well put together, though.
Yeah.
I think the choice of Billy the Kid comes out of like a boomer's childhood imagination.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's my opinion of that.
And I'm gonna another puzzle piece I would have for this is that Back to the Future 3 is set in the Old West. So this got to time travel in the Old West first, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
We now come to Socrates, or rather Socrates, which apparently is the way you're supposed to pronounce that. I looked it up. Socrates.
You find it listed under Socrates.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Which is hilarious. Like, okay, they heard their history teacher say Socrates, right? And I think they're getting most of their knowledge from hearing people rather than reading things. But yeah, then they do these mispronunciations of people's names all the time. So I don't know. Okay, so Socrates, or Socrates, I'm going to start saying it like that. I'm going to be one of those annoying people. Socrates, we find in 410 BC Athens, and I looked that up, and apparently this is a year that Athens had won a victory over Sparta, and democracy was restored after a short-lived oligarchic coup.
Yeah.
So, another interesting time. And they look up Socrates in their history books, and they get the quote, "The only true wisdom consists in knowing that you know nothing." To which they say, "That's us, dudes." But there's something to be said for that, right?
Yeah. Again, the fool theme.
And a little bit of self-awareness.
Yeah. I like that these characters aren't totally unself-aware, Like, I think that's part of their charm compared to and I like Beavis and Butthead too, but Beavis and Butthead seem like they're so unaware. You know what I mean? They just don't even know how dumb they are.
No, they don't.
So now they go and philosophize with Socrates. He's got this tablet with sand, which I never heard of him having something like this. Do you think he would have, Ishtar?
No.
Yeah.
Unless, no, because actually the geometry stuff starts with Plato.
Okay.
Not with Socrates. So Plato would have had something like a stick to do in the sand because he, was into no.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so Socrates has a sand table that he's philosophizing with, and so the example of philosophy they use is Ted goes up and says, "All we are is dust in the wind, dude." And then he goes to Socrates, "Dust, wind, dude," with the sand table. And that is an amazing scene. I love that scene.
Oh, yeah.
And then Socrates responds, like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives, in Greek, which here we have another thing. So, David, you probably knew that this was like a soap opera, right?
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I don't know about kids now, but yes.
Yeah, our parents watched Days of Our Lives, and that was like the tagline for Days of Our Lives.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
this
You
is
made me watch that for a whole summer.
What? Well,
Yeah,
okay.
there was a
You're gonna
storyline you were really into.
Are you going to hold this against me? Our parents got me addicted to it.
No. When I watched Bill and Ted's, I was like, oh, I know where this comes from. This is the converging of these two streams that I know about.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's see. Before we move on, some basic Socrates facts. Now I'm completely confused about how to pronounce his name. He lived from 470 BC to 399 BC. Lived in Athens. Famous for his method of philosophizing, the Socratic method, which, like, to give a very simple explanation, involves asking and answering questions in a dialogue until a contradiction is exposed in an initial assumption that students have made. So it's still used like widely in universities even today. And our knowledge of Socrates comes mainly from his student Plato's writings. And he ended his life. He was found guilty of heresy and corrupting the youth and sentenced to death. He drank hemlock, which was a poison, to die.
Very painful.
Yeah. And I think he's a great figure to have in this movie. Like, not only for his connection to, like, you know, speaking with youth and like being kind of an outlaw figure in his time, I guess, but just to have that like thinker in the movie. But he's also a very playful character in this whole movie, the way they portray Socrates.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how he's like an old dude, but he's, you know, later on he's like just having fun.
Yeah.
And everything. So he's like getting down with everything.
Which actually to me that makes sense of the historical Socrates. I think he's kind of portrayed by both Plato and Xenophon as a bit fun-loving.
All right, now we move out of Socrates. We go to medieval England, and this is really the only time period where they don't pick up anyone like historically significant. Now they've got Socrates and Billy the Kid also in the time machine with them, and they kind of leave them behind while they go to explore a castle they see in the distance, which they refer to as the Castle of King Henry. And there were many King Henrys in England during that time. This doesn't actually seem to reference any specific king, though, and none of them seem to have had daughters matching these princesses that they meet.
We don't know about the princesses because they were kidnapped.
Oh,
that's why we don't know about.
There you go.
Yeah.
You've solved it. You solved the problem. Mm-hmm. So they spot the princesses up in a tower, and Ted says, "Those are historical babes." And they just kind of instantly fall in love with them, which is like, you know, of course happens in so many movies. But here's a clip of when they finally sort of get their way into the castle and meet the princesses. So this is our like official romance of the movie. It's not given a lot of time in the movie, but here we are.
That old man must find a way to escape before the night falls. But how? What's that? Those boys. I can't believe they're here.
How's it going, ladies?
You're the ones we saw in front of the castle.
I am Ted of San Dimas. And, I bring to you a message of love.
From who?
From myself.
And what is this message you speak of?
Lyrics, dude. Recite him some lyrics. Oh, you beautiful babes from England, for whom we have traveled through time. Will you go to the prom with us in San Dimas? We will have a most triumphant time. Way to go. Ah!
What does your father want?
But to be married to two horrible old men today.
No way!
Will you help us escape?
Of course, babes.
How How's it going, Royal Ugly Dudes? I'm the Earl of Preston.
And I am the Duke of Ted.
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden?
Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus. We'll save you, babes!
All right, there we go. That famous line. Another one kids these days wouldn't get. Iron Maiden. Nobody knows that's a metal band anymore, probably.
I think some
Okay.
kids might still, especially the shirts. They might have the T-shirt
Yeah.
and not even know any of the music.
That's true enough, I suppose. Yeah. So these princesses are kind of throwaway characters in the movie. It's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I didn't even remember their names until I had to for the show, and I looked, and they have been recast in each sequel. The same actress has never played the princess. Missy is the same actress through all three movies, but not the princesses.
Yeah, well, Missy is a character.
But this is their big romance though, and I think that's like so much showing that this is in fact a bromance instead of a romance, because like the romantic angle is there for like a blip, and then it disappears again really until the end of the movie.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like, did this part of the plot make any impression upon you when you were watching it?
0.
Yeah, no, nothing. I think there just had to be a romantic interest. It's just part of the any story at this point in time.
Yeah. I would have really preferred if one of them had been into Joan of Arc, actually. I found her much more interesting. But
yes.
Might have interfered with her mission, though. So, I don't know. Anyway, there's another part of this scene where Bill and Ted are like in these suits of armor, and they start riffing on like a Star Wars like scene. Like one of them's like Darth Vader and one of them's Luke. And apparently that was just them improvising, which I love.
Oh, that's great.
And
they
there's
were
another
doing the scene from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another moment where Bill believes that Ted has died, and then he finds out that Ted's alive, and they hug each other. And then we get, of course, our homophobic slur in the movie. So, which was also pretty inevitable at that time in the movies. But it seems like so off kilter with the rest of their personalities,
Yeah, that's strange.
It's such a weird moment. I had forgotten about it when I rewatched this in 2020, and it's so weird, and it doesn't feel like it fits. But at the same time, I mean, it is just something that those kinds of guys would say back then.
Yeah.
And like, not saying that's a good thing necessarily, but like, it's just for the time, for the 80s, it was as commonplace as calling something, the R word or whatever. It was like just a word that kids used, and it fits in with these kinds of kids, these kinds of dummies.
I think we've finally gotten to a place where you can see two guys hug, in a show without them needing to like, decide that they have to make sure that everyone knows they're not gay,
Yeah.
Like finally, I think we're there where guys can just show affection to each other. But yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But what's interesting is Top Gun like definitely had much more like guys like, oiled up playing volleyball, and they never felt the need to defend their sexuality,
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino even like his character in Sleep With Me even points out like how almost homoerotic that movie is. Like if you ever watch that, like that bit that you can find on YouTube, like
you can ride my tail anytime.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah. So Bill and Ted then are at the end of this scene we just listened to, they're arrested and sentenced to death, but Socrates and Billy the Kid rescue them, like in an exciting chariot drive off. All right, now we come to the visit to the future, which I always like. It seems like it's like you said, Ishtar. It's like it's like those clean lines, that minimalist aesthetic. Like everyone's just sitting around in a room, and it seems really boring to me, actually.
Extremely boring.
Yeah, the future kind of sucks. Like, yeah, there's peace, but it's boring as hell.
This is so funny to me because this is utopia, and in utopia what you do is you sit around and you like wear the same outfit as everybody else, which is apparently silver, and you do a fake air guitar which is meant to mimic Bill and Ted.
It's an Apple store crushing your face forever.
That is good. Yeah, I like it. And what else is there to say about this? I don't know. They want Bill and Ted to talk to them, and they go, "Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes." And that has apparently become the slogan and the ethos for their entire civilization. So they're all excited about it.
Not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can do worse for sure, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the excess of this movie though, that you just watch this and you're like, yeah, this works. This is totally fine. Like it somehow fits.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I never liked the future aesthetic, and I didn't like, they're using. I know they were in style in the '80s. Those V-shaped guitars.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh god, for some reason the two of those things I always put together in my mind. I thought, no, that's not what the future's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look quite different.
And everyone wears sunglasses even though they're inside. That's another thing you have to do in the future, apparently. So, yeah. Anyway, so we come back to the present a little bit, and this is like my absolute favorite. These are my favorite scenes in the entire movie. Napoleon in the present.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We get him at the ice cream parlor where like there's these waiters going ziggy piggy, and encouraging him to eat this giant ice cream sundae. Apparently, those are the writers. Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon play the waiters who say ziggy piggy.
They're wonderful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're great.
And they put the badge in the right place on his uniform.
Yeah, we see Napoleon totally stuff his face on the ice cream along with Deacon, and he has these friends who are these girl twins. It's all perfect. I don't even know why. It's just great. I feel like it's impossible to explain why it's so good. It just is. You have to watch it.
Yeah, you just have to experience it. Absolutely. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. And now they go to a bowling alley, and Napoleon is changing the bowling score.
Yeah, he's cheating.
Do you think this is a disparagement of his character, Ishtar, or do you think he would indeed cheat at bowling?
I don't think he would cheat at bowling.
No?
No.
All right.
I think he'd take his defeat like a man and then commit himself to becoming the greatest bowler.
Anyway, this after he's cheating at bowling and kind of acting like an asshole, like Deacon and the twins ditch him, and so Napoleon is now lost and wandering in San Dimas. But he picks up his hat after he gets thrown out of the bowling alley and comports himself with great dignity as he walks out into the distance. Now there's a rapid fire succession of them, with the historical figures. They don't end up spending as much time with any of the next people. They just start grabbing people. So first they grab Sigmund Freud out of Vienna, Austria in 1901. And we find him there in 1900. He had just published The Interpretation of Dreams. And in 1901, he published The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, which is the text that introduced Freudian slips as a concept. He had not yet published on his sexual theories, such as the Oedipal complex, which come up later in the movie. And just basic Freud facts, he lived from 1856 to 1939. He invented psychoanalysis, which somehow I kind of forgot about. I don't know, because it's so huge. It's something we take for granted, that psychoanalysis, that examining your mental state is part of what we do now, right?
Sure.
Well, literally didn't exist like before Freud, like in that form. Like people just thought there was something physically wrong with you. Like it's kind of amazing. Like his contribution to culture is
his
huge.
main method was the free association method. And that's why he would have people sit on the couch, but he would sit behind them so they couldn't see him, so that they wouldn't react to his facial tics. So then they could by free associating, they would come upon what their actual problem was.
Huh. So I actually didn't realize that's why he did it that way. That's cool.
Yeah. He didn't. Yeah. He wanted them to just be completely free, and he would just sort of observe.
And one thing I found out that was interesting about Freud is he spoke German, French, Italian, Spanish, English, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. So really, he could have probably translated among all these historical figures pretty well.
He was a towering genius.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they grabbed Sigmund Freud. Totally realistic. He would have spoken perfect English like he does in the film. And Next, they grabbed Ludwig van Beethoven, who we find in Kassel, Germany, 1810. Apparently, this was during his middle period from 1802 to 1812, and it was during the time that he began to grow deaf. And there's a connection to Napoleon here. Napoleon's brother Jerome Bonaparte had offered Beethoven the position of Kapellmeister at the court in Kassel, which means the director of music for a monarch or a chapel. We find him playing the song Für Elise, you know, that famous song. He's believed to have composed that in 1810, the year in which we find him. So they did thoughtfully put this together in terms of the year. And another thing that was apparently thoughtfully put together, apparently the costume design, the Regency costume design here is really good. According to Hilary Davidson, the author of Dress in the Age of Jane Austen, apparently she measures like other Regency productions against what the extras in Bill and Ted were wearing.
Wow.
Yeah. And the actual costume designer in question is named Jill M. Ohannesson. Oddly enough, David, she was also the costume designer on Once Bitten, where I did not find the historical costumes to be very convincing.
Yeah, not as accurate, I'd imagine.
Maybe she got criticism for that movie and she's like, that's it. I'm going to make the best historical costumes ever in my next 80s comedy.
There you go.
And some other basic Beethoven facts. He lived from 1770 to 1827. He was one of the world's most famous composers and pianists, and he wrote many symphonies and opera, other pieces. You can't sum up Beethoven. I'm sorry.
No, you can't.
But we also get a musician now, and Bill and Ted are also into music. I don't know if they really pay that much attention to his music, though.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Rock dudes, they just don't appreciate it,
I think Eddie Van Halen appreciated them.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, Beethoven and Bach. Yeah. Jimmy Page certainly.
And then Ishtar, didn't you have something to say about Beethoven and Napoleon having
I made the mistake of digging into and discovering that there's an ongoing historical argument about where Beethoven stood on Napoleon. So what I've always understood in my life, which may be incorrect, was that Beethoven was at first seriously excited about Napoleon, thinking Napoleon was going to be was going to go around and crush the repressive monarchies of Europe as the champion of the ideals of the French Revolution. And what I'd always heard was that in 1804 he found out about Napoleon crowning himself emperor, and then and basically had a tirade. And in the tirade, the old saw is that he changed the name of a piece that he was writing in honor of Bonaparte, and instead changed it to the Heroic Symphony, which if you go online, you could find the Emperor Concerto in 3 movements, very different movements. It's the ones, in my opinion, the ones done by Glenn Gould are wonderful.
So, but there's some debate about this. It's not.
There's some. Yeah, I've started. I didn't go through all those journal articles.
That's okay.
But there's some review about whether Beethoven had a more nuanced opinion of Napoleon from start to finish, or whether he really did have him up on a pedestal and had this sort of huge reaction and sense of betrayal.
But certainly these are characters who would have been aware of each other, which is interesting.
He was profoundly aware of Napoleon.
Yeah, we have historical figures now in the telephone booth that were contemporaries.
in fact, in 1810, he would have been, Beethoven probably would have been getting into an argument with Napoleon if they were having real interactions.
I would have kind of liked that version of the movie. I would have liked that special deleted scene.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah, it never really comes up. Nobody's really interacting with each other as a historical figure, reacting to another historical figure, right?
Yeah. Right.
Kind of funny.
Yeah.
So now we get Joan of Arc. She would have been a contemporary to the princesses, probably. She's played in the movie by Jane Weedland of the band The Go-Go's, which is kind of awesome. We find her in Orleans, France in 1429. And from October to 1428 to May 1429 was the Siege of Orleans. The English besieged Orleans, France, and in May 8th, 1429, Joan of Arc led the French forces to break the siege. So again, an important part in her life. Basic facts of her life: she lived from 1412 to 1431. She was a peasant girl who at age 12 began to have visions from God that she must reclaim her country from the English. And at 16, she began to lead armies. She wore her hair short and dressed like a man to protect herself, and she helped to win a series of military victories. But then in 1430, she was captured, given to the English enemies, and convicted as a heretic. She was sentenced to burn to death. And then much later in 1920, she was canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. And I ended up watching the really well-respected silent film from 1928, The Passion of Joan of Arc, preparing for this film. I would not recommend it as a double feature, but I am glad that I watched it. So,
Wow.
Amazing research.
I mean, it really has very little to do with each other. Like The Passion of Joan of Arc, the whole time she's being put on trial for to die, right? And she's got these big eyes and like all this emotion. And in this movie, she's kind of like a happy-go-lucky, girl. And they have the telephone booth show up in front of her, like after she's praying to God. So it's kind of like she's getting a vision of Bill and Ted, which is so cheeky.
It's wonderful. Mon Dieu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she says that the Archangel Michael appeared to her, I guess, like in her history. So I guess Ted is the Archangel Michael now?
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely.
That works.
All right. And then they get Genghis Khan. Now in my 2023 brain, I watch this movie and I'm like, okay, the one non-white historical figure, and they portray him basically like an animal,
Yeah.
And I'm like, not great. I don't think he's probably speaking an authentic Asian language in this movie at any time. There's a lot of grunting happening.
Yeah.
And doesn't really seem accurate to what I read about him. We're in Outer Mongolia in 1209, and Genghis Khan would have been launching an invasion of, I don't know how to actually pronounce this, Western Xia? Xia? Okay. Oh, yeah, you speak Chinese. Okay, you tell about it.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can just use what I wrote, but where would he have been up to?
Oh, at the time he was, he was consolidating the Mongolian territories and getting into, I think the areas close to Xi'an, and parts of what we call Manchuria today. And he's not the one who later invades the Song dynasty in southern China. He that's his grandson or his son. But yeah, he's making a very big Pan-Asian empire already. What is kind of accurate is the debauch. A lot of ladies, even though he had a one wife that he really, really loved. There's a reason that so many people are genetically related to Genghis Khan. A huge percentage of Asian males. Or just Asian folks are related to Genghis Khan because he made an awful lot of children, and most of the great Khans had an awful problem with alcoholism. So there are a lot of truncated lives amongst the Mongolian rulers, including Genghis. So feasting and drinking, to excess.
So that's the actual pronunciation is like
Genghis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and apparently his actual name was Temujin. I don't know.
Temujin. Temujin. Yeah.
Which means iron worker. And the title, Genghis? Wait, say it
Genghis.
Again. Genghis. The title Genghis was actually a title meaning universe ruler. So I found that interesting. And I didn't even realize he was the grandfather of Kublai Khan.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kublai finished the job and took out the Song dynasty and took the rest of China.
Yeah, I really this a whole experience of just looking a little bit more into Genghis Khan was making me want to read about him. So yeah, I feel like he got kind of short shrift in the movie. He just seems kind of like he's kind of like a wild man, fighting people a lot and fighting the sporting goods store later.
Yeah.
It's intriguing though. I'm intrigued by him now. So, and he's probably the historical figure I knew the least about too when I was a kid, because we didn't learn a lot about Asian history,
No.
in our school. I don't know if you did in your school, David, but
I didn't learn about any history in my school, but that's besides the point.
But somebody probably attempted to teach you history, right?
Yeah, well, they tried.
Yeah. Like a lot of these figures, actually, we didn't learn about in our history class. Like I feel like we did so much American history focus. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, but speaking of American history, they also now get Abraham Lincoln, White House, 1863. I think the figure most people would be most familiar with. 1863 was the year of the Emancipation Proclamation, the Battle of Gettysburg, and the Gettysburg Address. Ishtar, you probably know like a million other things it was the year of, but we're not going to go into that.
No problem.
They trick Lincoln into the hall by saying there's a candygram straight out of Blazing Saddles. And some basic Lincoln facts: he lived from 1809 to 1865, was the 16th president. Of course, he was president during the Civil War, and he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. And Ishtar, like, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but how do you feel about the way Lincoln is kind of portrayed in the film?
I don't know. What are you going to do? I don't know. I think, well, he's not telling enough stories. And I think actually his character in the movie seems to like adapt very quickly to time travel.
Mm-hmm.
I think the historical Lincoln would have been down with time travel to the extent that this Lincoln was. Especially, he probably could have used a break in the middle of the Civil War.
That's true.
You know, it was rough. So I think he would have taken this and, you know, like, oh, okay, this is great. This is different. You know, just as long as they get me back. But wow, hey, yeah, you know, his voice hasn't done so well. He kind of had a higher pitched voice, which, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis, you know, was attempting to get in the Lincoln film. But yeah, he was an incessant storyteller.
Interesting.
Yeah, I remember when the trailer first came out for the Steven Spielberg, Daniel Day-Lewis Lincoln movie, and I know me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people like myself were like, "What is this voice he's doing? He doesn't sound anything like Lincoln in Bill and Ted. Like this is so wrong. What is he doing?"
Yeah, he was doing what was probably the most accurate portrayal of Lincoln's voice as far as we know.
Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing.
From accounts. Yeah.
And by the way, I was really hoping that one of you was just going to have Napoleon, The Passion of Joan of Arc, and Lincoln as your double features, but we haven't got the trifecta, but that's okay. I think that's an alternate double feature suggestion.
That's an alternate one, yeah.
There you go.
All right, let's begin the spoiler section. So if you haven't seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, it's a good time to bow out now and go and watch the movie. Like, I swear to God, it's much like, it's very fun. It's very light. We're putting a lot of more history in here in the podcast than you're actually going to get in the movie. So, you know.
You'll get none in the movie.
A little bit. Little glimpses. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. So now we come to the historical figures in San Dimas, which is really like, this is like where the movie just picks up steam for me. What about you guys?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's so much fun.
Yeah. First, Missy says that she needs them to do some chores before she's going to drive them any place. So we have all the historical figures doing chores.
One of them is cheating by sweeping stuff under. Is that Billy the Kid who cheats?
I don't remember. I mostly remember poor
Sigmund Freud.
Genghis Khan. They have him like drinking the toilet water, which is very sad.
Oh God, that is very sad.
Yeah.
That's an Idiocracy crossover. You know, like from
true.
the toilet.
True.
No.
There you go.
He'd be looking for Brondo.
Yes.
Man, those cons only did alcohol. He wouldn't have touched water with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, because it would kill you back then. The water is so.
True.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the chores scene is one thing, and it has its moments, like its funny moments. But then they find out the Deacon ditched Napoleon. Deacon says he was a dick, and Bill and Ted leave to find Napoleon at the water. They're like, "Where would I go if I were in San Dimas?
If I were a great general in San Dimas, where would we go? Waterloo."
And they have no idea that that's a battle. So that's what makes that so fucking fantastic. And the water park scene, they couldn't afford to actually film in a closed off water park. So they actually, the people in close up are extras they hired. Everyone else, like in the distance in the scene, is somebody who just paid to go to the water park that day, which I find wonderful.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I love this scene. Do you all also love this scene?
It's amazing.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the scene that shows Napoleon's transformation. No, he gets down to his underwear. He's in a vulnerable position, and he doesn't know what to. He faced his failure at the bowling alley, and now he discovers something. You know, he goes into this dark tunnel of transformation, and at first it scares him, but then he's birthed anew into joy when he's thrown into the water, and so then he gets his feet on the ground and of course he selfishly pushes other people out of the way to get into the slide, but then he becomes an instructor and he starts training his new army in the art of water slide technique, which fits his character because he actually started out as an artilleryman and was very technically proficient at the common everyday tasks his soldiers faced and lived with them. And that's why they all loved him, because he wasn't one of these aristocratic, never done spend any time with them, doesn't know anything types. He was, of them. So
you've made the scene very deep, and it's also ironic that his victory and his conquering of the water park takes place at Waterloo, the scene of his defeat in reality.
Yes,
true that. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a sad tragedy, actually.
Yeah, well, the sheer joy that this actor shows in this scene is kind of amazing. Like that Napoleon then shows.
Absolutely. Killer song in the background too. The boys and the girls are doing it.
Oh yeah. Which band was that again? Let's see.
I'm not sure. One of these 80s groups.
I have it listed here.
It was
Vital Signs. Vital Signs is the name of this band.
Bad name. Good name.
Yeah. We all know the boys and the girls are doing it. Yeah. All the music in this is kind of like kind of B-side metal, but like fantastic nonetheless, right?
Absolutely.
For me, the crowning scene of this movie, though, is the mall montage. And honestly, I can't think of a montage in any movie that I like more than the scene at the mall. Where does it fall for you both?
Combined with the Waterloo scene, like this is where, it's just nonstop boom, 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 80s fun. Like all this. It's such a time capsule, first of all, of, setting something in a mall at that moment in time. Everything just feels so authentic and how I remember balls in the 80s, except for you've got these ridiculous situations happening with these characters from history. And they each, play into their strengths. I mean, even Genghis Khan, who, we're talking about, is maybe not the best portrayal. It's still really fun the way he's beating up that whole sports store.
Yeah.
All of it is just so much fun.
Yeah, like everybody's got their own thing. Like Beethoven's at the music shop tearing up the synthesizer. Joan of Arc takes over the aerobics class. Like,
it's one of the best montage scenes it's my favorite montage scene in a film.
It's mine too. Like, I think like the only montage that comes close to it for me is the one in Wet Hot American Summer with the song Higher and Higher. Yeah.
That is a classic too. But yeah, no, it's great. So much fun.
Yeah, and so the result of all these shenanigans in the mall, though, is that the historical figures are arrested, and now there's this whole scene where Bill and Ted bust them out of jail. For me, this scene is just a little more boring. Like, I don't know. They have to go to Ted's dad's jail where he works as like the sheriff or something.
Yeah.
It's very boring. I like this scene because we get some like fun, how Bill and Ted would, utilize time travel kind of moments in this. So I think some of these are really fun.
Yeah. Like we're going to put the keys behind the sign.
Yeah. So simple.
Yeah, the keys connects back to an earlier scene where Ted's dad said that he lost his keys. So that's good. The stuff with like the garbage can, I think Ishtar, you already said, like, where did they get the garbage can? It doesn't all make sense, but they kind of just like, they fake it till they make it kind of thing.
The garbage can almost seems like something that Neo would do in the Matrix. So,
It looks like it dropped out of nowhere. That's my beef with the garbage can.
Yeah.
No, I love the part where the guy tries to pull off Lincoln's beard. For some reason, and Lincoln's indignation towards why I'm Abraham Lincoln. Haha, very funny. Now give me the beard and the hat. And,
I'm sorry I didn't mention that in the mall montage. Yeah, that part is amazing. And, like the dignity that the actor playing Lincoln displays there too.
And he keeps saying, "I'm a lawyer," when he's in court. I'm a lawyer. Yeah.
And then Freud in the police station, like the police psychologist is like, why do you believe that you're Sigmund Freud? Why do you believe that I am not?
Yeah. I like that. Actually, going back, the first line that Freud says when he's abducted by them is in German. He says, "Is this a dream?"
Yeah.
So I think the whole experience is when he gets back to Vienna, he's going to write it down as a dream.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Basically.
Yeah.
He had a weird relationship with the supernatural. That's what also necessitated the split with Jung.
So we now come to the history presentation. Before Bill and Ted's presentation, we get snippets of other speeches. There's like a black girl who actually seems to be giving a pretty competent, presentation about Marie Antoinette and what she would think of San Dimas. Like saying, instead of saying "let them eat cake," she might have said "let them eat fast food." Like she uses big words in her presentation. Is all I'm going to say. Like
she's talking about income disparity.
Yeah,
she was saying like our society's going to shit.
Yeah, stratification. She uses the word stratification. Yep. So hers is like the example of what a good one of these presentations would be. Then we get the like kind of bonehead jock guy who says, everything is different, but the same. Things are more moderner than before. And then as he's dying on stage, he all of a sudden goes, San Dimas high school football rules. And everybody applauds for him. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks with my high school experience. Like,
oh yeah, and I think that's probably how it still is.
Yeah, this is like a crazy history presentation, though. By the way, like I remember Mr. Ryan says it's going to take like 2 hours to do the presentation. We see an auditorium with like hundreds of kids in it, and like. I think this probably like relates to like the original ending of the movie. Bill and Ted were just going to give their presentation in the classroom that you see them in the beginning of the movie. And like, it wasn't this big to do, right? But then the movie felt really like underwhelming at the end. So I think it was a smart decision to move it to this auditorium and have them present it like a rock concert and everything. But at the same time, it makes it seem like no high school presentation I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, pretty much. It's I've certainly never been to one like this.
Like, I can't even imagine doing a history report in front of 100 people, right?
No.
Like, and then listening to everybody else give them. Oh my God.
Oh God. Yeah. Help me.
But I think it was a good choice cinematically. Things can't be exactly like they are in real life in a movie. This is a good example of that. Okay, so just as Mr. Ryan has assumed that Bill and Ted have missed their presentation, they turn the stage into a rock concert with like fog machines and music playing. And Billy the Kid comes on stage to introduce them. He is laughed at first, at which point he shoots out a light. And at any time after 1999, that presentation would have been over and the police would have been called.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, it's proximate. What was that film where the high schoolers, fight the Soviets?
Oh.
From the
Red
80s.
Dawn?
Red Dawn. Yeah, it was close enough to Red Dawn where it's probably like, hey, go for it. Good, we got some shooters here.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the Freud analyzing Ted was wonderful.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can you introduce that really quick? Like, just explain what's happening before you say that? Sorry.
Oh, of course. At the end, basically all the historical figures get to show off their strengths in kind of a speech montage. And of course, Joan of Arc is doing aerobics and is going to train her troops in this. And Socrates just kind of loves San Dimas and also billiards and baseball and things of that nature. And Freud has one of his couches out and Ted's on it, which is wonderful. And when he tries to get Bill on the couch, of course, Bill says, "Oh no, I know I just have a mild Oedipal complex."
Just referring to Missy. Yeah.
Referring to Missy.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I looked at Napoleon's Operation Water Slide. I don't think it will work either. He's trying to send a whole army through Scandinavia, cross the Gulf of Finland into Finland, and then invade Russia from there. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's like
and Russia's basically when he started to be defeated, right? Like.
Oh yeah, that and the Iberian Peninsula, but mostly Russia, because he marched an army of 500,000 La Grande Armée into Russia, and he came back with like 30,000 troops.
Whew. Jesus. Yeah. Anyway, like they all kind of do their things. And so here, and then Ted and Bill are somehow conversant in these historical figures too. There's been no actual time in the movie for them to have like realistically learned all these things about these guys, right? So I feel like they must have done another thing where they traveled into the future to study and came back. What do you all think about this?
They don't have time for that because of that stupid plot device of the time in San Dimas somehow always ticking.
Yeah, but like they didn't have time to learn from Joan of Arc about the Dauphin.
Yeah.
They weren't reading their history books. They can't even speak French. So how did they learn all this? So this is like
Right.
a completely hyper real, like unrealistic, aspect of the film. I mean, I love it. I love it.
I mean, it's none of it's real whatsoever. Like, and also, I mean, it's basically a sentence about each. Like,
Yeah.
it's a script that they learned. So that's about it.
And when did Beethoven have time to find out about the album Slippery When Wet too, though? That's another key
I don't know.
thing.
I mean, it was everywhere in the late 80s. So.
Yeah. And when did Socrates learn about billiards? But anyway, okay. I'm sorry to pick on you, Bill and Ted. Yeah, because the topic of this whole presentation is what would the historical figures think of San Dimas in 1989 or whatever? And I can't even imagine that topic being set by a teacher, but anyway. Okay, so
especially for a high school senior sort of thesis project. It seems a horrible prompt.
Baby brained.
So the last part of this big presentation is the Lincoln speech, which I feel compelled that I must share. So here's their final cap. The cap to their whole presentation is Abraham Lincoln, the historical figure that probably would have made the deepest impression upon their peers. So here we go.
And now for our last speaker, one of the greatest presidents in American history, Mr. Abraham Lincoln.
Fourscore and 7 minutes ago, we, your forefathers, were brought forth upon a most excellent adventure, conceived by our new friends, Bill and Ted. These two great gentlemen are dedicated to a proposition which was true in my time, just as it's true today. Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
Yeah, any thoughts about Lincoln's speech that he gives?
I mean, it's like I said, kind of half jokingly when it came to the Day-Lewis. I mean, this is like the de facto Lincoln. This particular clip. This is what people like me who didn't take the time to seek out more educational material on him. This is what we think of when we think of Abraham Lincoln. Is this clip?
And do you think of him saying, "Party on, dudes"?
Hell yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny.
I love 7 minutes ago, which would have implied that it was like 80 years and 7 minutes ago.
Yeah, that doesn't make any bloody sense. It was in 1908. What are we talking about here? It makes no sense.
Yeah. That's the part that always got me because, I studied the Gettysburg Address enough to figure out what 4 meant, right? So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, whatever.
Anything more to add about the history presentation or Lincoln or anything?
Oh, right. I still my favorite part of the scene is when Napoleon hits the sort of like his risk board with his sword.
Yeah.
And it says Victoire Napoleon.
No. Triomphe Napoleon.
Triomphe. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I should be noted really quick that my brother used to dress as Napoleon whenever we played Risk. So this is important for everyone to know.
It's very important, and I utilized a strategy that you really can't win a Risk game with, which was I fixated on conquering Europe.
Yeah,
which is probably the worst thing you can do, but I had to.
Yeah, yet still you beat me quite often, so I don't know.
I think from time to time.
Yeah.
I do like when Ted refers to Miss of Arc.
Miss of Arc.
Yeah.
Amazing. So the end of the movie, we see the time travel booth disappears off the stage. All their fellow students get lighters out and say, "We want more," continuing the rock band aesthetic. And now, like, we see them a little later. They're still playing their instruments, not very well. Ted's like, maybe we should learn how to play, so implying some character growth. And then Rufus shows up and he brings the princesses. And like again, the princesses just come up and they each choose a guy sort of arbitrarily, or do they go together by hair color? Like, what's going on here?
I thought they'd already established like their pair bonding
based on hair
didn't
color.
they? No.
I think it is hair color based. Yeah,
wasn't it back in the medieval time?
Possibly. But based on what though? You know what I mean?
Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
Based on nothing.
Then Rufus tells the guys that their music is going to eventually end war and poverty, align the planets, and allow communication with aliens and household pets. I think this is actually the first time he tells them the supreme importance of their music. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think he might say it in voiceover, like to the to us or whatever, but not to them though. They don't know.
And Rufus asked to jam with them. He's apparently really good at guitar. This was not George Carlin's hands doing this though. And they are terrible at music. And Rufus then tells the audience they do get better. And that's pretty much the end of our movie.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the movie before we talk about some details like the bromance?
I think that covers the movie itself.
All right. Before we do the bromance, actually, David, I want to hear if you have any other puzzle pieces that you want to talk about related to Bill and Ted. And that could lead into some of the bromance stuff too, actually.
Yeah, sure. And we actually did do a piecing it together episode where I expand on a lot more, but I just brought like a few specifics that I had in mind here. So for things that inspired Bill and Ted, along with Back to the Future, I have Heavy Metal, the 1981 animated film that kind of bridges the gap between like, heavy metal album covers and comic books and action adventure movies. Also, I had the I Want to Rock music video, which is itself inspired by Animal House, but Ted being sent off to military school and, they only care about rock and roll and just, that whole kind of thing. For things that Bill and Ted inspired, I mean, there's so many. First of all, right off the bat, we already mentioned Beavis and Butthead and Jay and Silent Bob. I think we mentioned Wayne and Garth at some point, but they fit in there too.
Yeah, and actually, can I stop you just for a second with Wayne's World? So I found out that the first Wayne's World skit aired on Saturday Night Live the day after Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was released in theaters. That is so crazy to me.
I just found that out too, and that is absolutely wild. I don't even know how that's possible, but it's perfect though. It's a perfect little bit of pop culture trivia, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
The other one I thought about bringing up, Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yes.
Yes. Something where time travel happens in a very silly, ridiculous kind of way. So, there's so many things though that you can bring up here.
Yeah, and when you say that you did a piecing it together, was it for Bill and Ted Face the Music specifically, or did you do a Bill and Ted specific, the first one episode?
So what we did, because, I remember it was 2020, the middle of the pandemic, and, we were trying to make content however we could. Right before Face the Music came out, I did a special bonus episode on both Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey as a combination. And we talked about some movies that inspired those and then some movies that those inspired. And so we got into a whole lot of extra stuff as a kind of way of celebrating the series right before Face the Music came out. And then we did a regular episode on that.
Nice. Well, if those are still up, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, I will find them or you can send them to me and I will link those in the show notes. So if you want to hear more of David's thoughts about the puzzle pieces, we can send you that way. And I think that would be awesome. Yeah, so this bromance thing. So like some of the puzzle pieces are obviously these other bromances. Like bromance has been around in cinema for a long time. Like some early examples might be like Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. And then in the 70s and 80s, you have Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the Blues Brothers, and of course, Top Gun. But I feel like the right after Bill and Ted, the period in the 90s, there was this like particular type of bromance between young slackers with like
Yeah.
kind of somewhat questionable intelligence. And I feel like Bill and Ted is like the prototype for that. Like we just said, Wayne's World came, like it was released like on Saturday Night Live the day after this. In 1992, they had their first movie. And then in 1993, we had the first episode of Beavis and Butthead, the much more stupid pair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless,
Absolutely.
I loved Beavis and Butthead, though.
Oh, they're so great.
And then Kevin Smith's work like just feels very connected to this now because, and also he used George Carlin in his movies too, which gives it an extra connection. Like pretty much all Kevin Smith movies have a bromance. Like Clerks has a bromance between the main characters, and it introduces Jay and Silent Bob. The one thing I like about Kevin Smith is that Jay and Silent Bob sort of over time embrace their bromance and the sort of romantic aspect of it and call each other hetero life mates. Like they're still referring to the fact that they're heterosexual, but at the same time, like they're not using a particular slur. Although they do say some kind of offensive things. Like you could look at them as offensive or not, I think, depending on where you're coming from. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of these duos ever intend any offense with anything that they say. They're always such like good-natured, just fun-loving dudes, you know, and they're certainly never meaning it. Some of it just doesn't age as well, but
Yeah.
you know, what one thing I think that does separate Bill and Ted a little bit from all of these, even though there is so much influence there, Bill and Ted, they never really like have a falling out in the movie. They love each other like unconditionally, you know. Like Bill does get a little annoyed that Ted keeps talking about his mom. We didn't really mention that earlier, but you know, other than that though, like there's no question that they're going to be best friends forever, you know. And whereas all these other movies, there's always that moment where they like kind of break apart and go their, you know, their separate ways, and then they come back together for the big finale or whatever. But that's one like little difference with a lot of these guys.
Oh, like yeah, some of them I don't think I've seen Wayne's World in a long time, so I don't remember that. Like, but I feel like Jay and Silent Bob are always pretty close together, though, aren't they? So like, I think they might be the closest. Maybe I don't know.
I don't recall them having a fight.
Yeah, certainly throughout the like those first few View Askew movies, they never do. But I think they did in maybe it was Clerks 3 or
Jay
and Silent Bob
I might
reboot.
have
One of those. Yeah,
I have not seen Clerks 3 yet, so yeah, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, one interesting thing about the bromance genre is like it's kind of giving men a place to be close to each other, but there's often this discomfort with sexuality like embedded in it. Not being a dude, like I don't really relate to that so much. Like women are encouraged to be close friends and it's never like a question of like, oh, you must be in love with each other. Do either of you have anything to contribute about these bromance movies or how they relate to like real life male friendships?
I mean, I think that one thing is that the you know, the times change so much that it you know, from era to era, it changes the way that those relationships are. I mean, we had the whole, you know, Apatow era where it almost influenced the culture to where guys were. I mean, I remember like in the middle of you know, Super Bad and Knocked Up and 40-Year-Old Virgin, like friends saying "I love you" to me, you know, where that's like something that never happened 10 years earlier, you know. So it's like things did change a little bit because of these kinds of characters.
Do either of you have a bromance in your life, in your history, do you think?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My best friend for sure.
The way the movies portray these types of friendships, do you find them to be like accurate on some level or like relevant in some way?
I do. I mean, I think it's just a constant like you just love each other's company and you love goofing around, and it's just you know, you kind of can't picture there ever being a time when you're not friends.
Yeah, the ones listed, I think my male friendships, there's been aspects of the relationship in Wedding Crashers, Harold and Kumar, and Step Brothers for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I wish we had
absolutely.
more time to dig into this on the podcast. I would love to know the Wedding Crashers of it all.
Wouldn't you like to know that?
Were
Yeah.
you indeed crashing weddings, or
Would have. No, but I don't know, having fun getting into mischief and making up characters and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, these films seem to endure. Like they seem to be like a version of this in every era. And do either of you have particular favorites in the genre of the bromance movie?
I mean, really, Bill and Ted is one of my favorites in the genre. I loved 40-Year-Old Virgin. I think Judd Apatow's work has kind of hit a wall lately in the last 10 years, but that still stands, I think, as one of the best when it comes to like just capturing those kinds of dudes who are just like goofballs and just love to, kind of mess with each other, but at the same time, just really truly love each other. I think it's one of the best.
Yeah, I might track back a little bit. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Hmm.
Yeah, especially because they're facing death together. Well, at one point, real death, and and other points, and they get vulnerable with each other in those spaces, and the love shines through. Yeah, and they also have tension because they're after the same woman, but it doesn't get in the way of their friendship.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I quite like that part of their dynamic. I said unfortunately, I've never had a friend who I'd be driving somewhere and then Neil Patrick Harris gets in our car.
Oh, is that a Harold and Kumar reference?
That's a Harold and
Yes.
Kumar
Okay.
reference.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I would like that high strangeness to be in some of those.
Yeah, I would have to say my favorite of the bromance, I think, would probably be Chasing Amy, but it's probably because there's a woman character who's very relevant to the plot too. Because I think that's a way into the genre for me, and seeing the way a woman affects the dynamic of the bromance also, because
Sure.
that's a situation I've seen before. So yeah, and also I just like the writing in that particular movie, and the performances I feel are very authentic as well. So that would be a favorite of mine. So really quick, I want to just get your impressions of the sequels to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Like without spoiling too much, like did you see both of them? Do you like them? Is there one you like better?
So I love Bogus Journey. I hated it when it came out. I was so disappointed, 10 years old. I just thought it was the worst thing in the world. When I finally rewatched it in 2020, I love it almost as much as this movie, but in a totally different way. It's
Okay.
just so ridiculous and leans into just the strangeness of it all. I just think it's so much fun. Face the Music, it's well-meaning, and I certainly didn't hate it. It had its moments. I just think it kind of doesn't stick the landing.
How about for you, Ishtar? Have you seen?
I've not yet seen Face the Music. I certainly saw Bogus Journey, but it's been a long time. I mean, obviously riffing on doing a parody of Death from the Seventh Seal.
Yeah.
And having him play Twister, that's the part somehow, just those scenes stuck in my mind. But I don't even know what, I think it would be something that I would watch. And if I watched it, I was in a bad way because it would usually be on WGN on a Saturday, and I would have been better off being outside. That's my memory.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a much better movie than I remember, but usually I'd be like, oh shit, is this depression? I gotta go.
So for me, like I remembered disliking Bogus Journey, and I hate to say, David, but I watched it again, like for this podcast, and I was like, oh no, I still really didn't like it. I love the death scenes. I think those are golden. Like that whole sequence and that actor are so great. And that's also one of my favorite things that they bring that back and Face the Music. Then I think that was I think they took some of the strengths from the first two movie for Face the Music, like having historical figures, in this case, musicians, and then having death. I think it was a bit too polished. It wasn't as anarchic as the first two movies. So I think maybe that's where like the less joy comes from in the sequel.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do prefer Face the Music to Bogus Journey though. Like the other parts of Bogus Journey and the non-death parts, I just did not vibe with very much. I don't know. And I like that in Face the Music, there's actually like women talking to each other sometimes.
That's certainly a good aspect of it. And I don't want to get into spoilers for it, but just I don't like the ending at all.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I don't like the ending of either of them, though, either of the sequels. But the thing that I love the most in Face the Music, though, is they kind of confront the bromance thing head on by having Bill and Ted and their wives, the princesses, they go to a counseling session, and Bill and Ted schedule it at the same time. And
that was my favorite part of the whole movie. Yeah.
It's like, no, dudes, you have to have like separate relationships with your wives. You can't do literally everything together. They kept saying, we love you, like instead of saying, I love you. And it's like, it's so great. It's deconstructing the bromance genre in a sense, which is really clever, I thought. Yeah. I do agree with you. The whole film doesn't live up to that, but yeah. Okay, so I think we can then get to our double feature recommendations. So let's just do them in little batches of our own here. So my first double feature recommendation is going to be Somewhere in Time from 1980, and that is because of the Matheson time travel connection, okay? As you recall, Richard Matheson wrote Somewhere in Time. His son Chris Matheson co-wrote Bill and Ted's, and we covered that on episode 42 of Every Rom Com. I'm just going to say here that it is a very romantic, very beautifully filmed time travel movie. Very different than Bill and Ted, but I think it could be an enjoyable experience watching them back to back, nevertheless. My second double feature recommendation also involves kind of weird time stuff going on. It's not, the people aren't time traveling, but their letters are time traveling through a magical mailbox. So this is The Lake House from 2006, and it stars Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. I think it's one of Keanu Reeves' more effective romantic roles. So if you want to watch kind of more of an actual romantic movie with Bill and Ted, there you are. And I think Keanu's, pretty hot in this movie too. So if you're a Keanu fan, you might like it. My co-host Sybil hates this movie though and refers to it disparagingly as the magical mailbox movie. So I'll just say that. And my third selection is going to be 2019's Always Be My Maybe. And that's because Keanu Reeves makes one of the best small role cameo appearances in a movie of all time as himself. It's a rom-com, and it's just a lot of fun. So I think if you enjoy just a funny, kind of sweet movie, there's another one for you to watch with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And it's got starring Ali Wong and Randall Park, who also co-wrote the script.
All right, I'm not settled on mine, so I'm just gonna go with what I feel in the moment.
Sure.
I think my number one would actually be The Little Buddha, 1993 by Bertolucci, and because it has Keanu Reeves as the Buddha, and he's not really the main character, but he kind of is in a way. The movie's about the kids, but I think it was I wasn't a big fan of him as Jonathan Harker. In Bram Stoker's Dracula. At the same time, I kind of am. And I thought, like, well, what is his character in Bill and Ted's Translate? So he's an enlightened being. That's where his next stop is, because he's a divine fool. So it made sense for him to be Buddha. The other one is Time Bandits from 1981, in a Terry Gilliam film. And mainly because it has time travels involved. Some people they do nab. The little boy gets nabbed. And they nab a few other things because it's actually a bunch of thieves going around who steal things. What else? Oh yeah, because Ian Holm plays Napoleon.
Nice.
It's Ian Holm in it, and Napoleon's made this comic caricature who only likes small people and short things and small things because it makes him feel big. And what else? I would actually involve Idiocracy.
Nice.
As my third double feature choice. It actually does involve time travel, just of a manner.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just love movies about people being really stupid. I love people just who are really stupid in films, and this one just took the cake. And of course, it has the Beavis and Butthead connection with Mike Judge being the creator. So those would be my three. I think that was 2005 or 06. I forget the year.
It all comes back around. It all connects.
Yeah, it all connects.
All right, so I will go with, first of all, I might as well do this one first. In theaters right now, it's Joaquin Phoenix starring as Napoleon in Ridley Scott's new epic. And I don't want to get into like spoilers or anything like that, but I can't imagine that they didn't look at this version of Napoleon as part of the inspiration for this movie, because Ridley Scott has like gone on record that he does not care about historical accuracy or anything like that. He just wanted to make a movie about a silly little guy who rises to power and is very silly and ridiculous, and that's all I'll say about it. But I enjoyed it. I really like late period Ridley Scott. I think he's in a very interesting era right now. The movies aren't as good as some of his older movies, but they're certainly interesting. Next up, I'll go with Freaked from 1993, Alex Winter's directorial effort, which is a completely insane movie about a guy who's basically kidnapped by this freak show and transformed. It's more in line with Bogus Journey. If you like Bogus Journey, I think you'll like Freaked. If you don't, I don't know, maybe not. But it's very strange. It's really crazy and over the top, and it's great. I just saw it for the first time a couple years ago.
Nice. And wait,
And
where
then
did you? Sorry to interrupt, but where did you find this? Is it streaming or like?
I believe it's streaming now, but I was actually a guest on another podcast, and they brought it to me to watch.
Nice.
So yeah, but I believe it finally made its way to streaming because I know it just got a new Blu-ray release.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's probably available now. And then my third pick is Never Going Back from 2018. We mentioned Wayne and Garth. We mentioned Jay and Silent Bob, Beavis and Butthead. And we did mention that Bill and Ted technically aren't stoners, but they kind of share that kind of stoner style quality. And Angela and Jesse, the main stars of Never Going Back, are the perfect female stoner duo. They are just these two ridiculous slackers who they basically lose some money, and then they need to get it back so they can go on their vacation. And they're so stoned that they like don't even really realize the adventure that they're getting themselves into. It's a film put out by A24 from director Augustine Frizzell, and it's really under the radar, but it's great, and it's really funny and weird and ridiculous, and a big recommendation for me.
Nice. I've never heard of that one. And just like to ask, are they going back in time in this movie? Or like,
no, there's no time travel in this. Although they're so stoned, they wouldn't even know if they did.
Because it sounded like a time travel title, but like it sounds really interesting. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah.
Right on.
So David, to remind people again, where can they find your work?
Yeah, you can find Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. I also have a Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where people love to talk movies. You could join us there. And then for my music, all my albums are available on all the streaming services under my name, David Rosen. And I do have a website, bydavidrosen.com, where you can check out all my albums, the films that I'm working on, and my music videos and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely check David's stuff out. Very good stuff. And my fine brother Ishtar, where would you like to send people to see your work or to perhaps solicit meditation teachings from you?
Oh, yes. Well, you could find me all over YouTube if you type in either Ishtar Howell or Ishtar Ishaya. And Ishtar Ishaya, I think, will help get you to my actual personal YouTube channel, but I do a lot of interviews with different shows. And then you can, if you type in Ishtar Howell and meditation, you'll probably find your way to my meditation website, www.ascensionmeditation.com, which will be in the show notes. And if you are interested in getting a intuitive or astrological reading, then that website is awakenedlightastrology.com.
Yeah. And my brother is a most excellent meditation teacher. So if you're interested in something to calm you down or get you some insight, I recommend him too. So really great to have you both on. Thanks for bearing with a kind of a long episode, and always a pleasure to talk to both of you. And thanks everyone for listening. Goodbye.
Adieu.
Goodbye, dudes.